Chapter 659 Array Focus. Chapter 659 Array Focus. Hen Yi. But for Ling Han, this was a piece of cake. His physique was too tough, and his whole body seemed like a mountain on its own, so how could he simply be blown away by some kind of strange wind? Every step he took was steady and firm. Body of diamond showed its might, so naturally, he was as unmovable, indestructible, and eternal as diamond. The second round is to collect stones, and the more the better. However, as long as I can reach the goal in 3 days' time, I will be able to qualify for the second test, so being a little late would be alright, just enough to allow others time to pick up stones, and I would only have to snatch them away. On the path of cultivation, contest is naturally inevitable. In fact, I am quite intrigued by the air streams that have appeared here. There should be some kind of array here, which is the only thing that can produce such conditions. If I were able to obtain the formation's eyes, that would be rather nice. It's decided. Ling Han, bringing with him 2 beauties, one big one and another small, went off in search of the formation's eyes. There were no spiritual herbs of any kind on the 3 mountains, merely an area of very ordinary forest. Thus, everyone merely concentrated on their journey as there was no need to be distracted here. When they saw Ling Han carrying 2 girls, looking extremely relaxed, they were all naturally dumbfounded. Since they were trapped in an array, they could naturally feel how powerful the air streams in this place were. The winds here were so strong that they felt like they were mere mortals who had walked into a frosty land with terrible conditions. Every step they took seemed to be incomparably difficult. But just take a look at Ling Han. He had 2 people in his arms, yet could still walk so easily. Under such a comparison, they really felt like breaking out into tears. You shouldn't strike such a blow on their fragile hearts like that. When Chen, Zhao Yuan, and other such super prodigies also saw this, and they all could not help but look surprised. They were all very conceited. Although they had not obtained the invitation to enroll directly in the Restore Heaven Academy, they were all confident in their own abilities. The reason why they had not gotten an invitation was merely because they had kept too much of a low profile in the past. This time, they had all decided to become famous with a single feat. But they had yet to shock anyone with their outstanding prowess when they themselves were shocked first. This person should have cultivated some cultivation technique that is earth-aligned and focuses on strength, which must be why his center is so firm, when Ren Qian and the other prodigies all thought, sweeping aside the stray thoughts in their heads. This test seemed to have been fitted precisely for Ling Han. Therefore, it was all right even if they could not compare with him in this round, who in this world was absolutely perfect and without flaws. Ling Han could not care less about the others. He journeyed all over the mountainous terrain, and finally, in the extreme outer areas of the mountain forest, discovered the first formation's eye. It was a flag which was only about 3 meters tall. Its flagpole was made from a completely black metal, and there were multiple patterns etched on it. The flag that fluttered in the wind was nothing ordinary either, but there were no array patterns on it. Instead, there was only a winged lion that was baring its claws and teeth. Ling Han was surprised. The array patterns were naturally etched on the flagpole, but the flag was not mere decoration either. On the other hand, it was a key feature of the array. Unfortunately, Ling Han had yet to comprehend the amazing mysteries behind it. "This lion looks like it's alive!" Hunyo exclaimed, pointing at the flag. "And it's actually breathing in and out, so fun!" Realization dawned on Ling Han. The array patterns were used to collect power from nature, and this flag was to turn this power into real winds that blew towards the mountain forest, which could be the only way the haphazard strange winds were formed. "What a good item, it's mine!" Ling Han stretched out a hand to pull out the flag, but immediately, a lion's roar echoed. The lion on the flag actually took form, and became a fierce lion that was 150 meters in size. As its wings flapped, a powerful wind was produced. "Little lion, be good and come into my bowl!" Hunyo, meanwhile, had brought out various pots and pans, and was currently salivating. "Though it is not a real living creature, it has nurtured a sliver of bloodline and divine strength of a winged lion. After Ling Han studied it for a few moments, he looked surprised. This lion was formed by the spiritual chi that the array flag had gathered from the surrounding environment, but there was actually a sliver of the bloodline that had been left behind by the winged lion when it had been alive. This allowed it to be filled with life, just as if it was a real living creature. It should have been drawn with the blood of a winged lion. Only that could result upon realization in such a lifelike winged lion as if there was a real demonic beast crouching in front of them. It was no wonder that Hunyeo would drool foolishly when she saw it. Right, then I'll suppress you first, Ling Han declared with a smile, and delivered an attack in the winged lion's direction. He was really too powerful as he had formed Sword Ray, and had achieved minor accomplishment level in Body of Lightning, as well as having an indestructible physique from Body of Diamond. Even if he did not use any mystical power, his battle prowess had reached the peak level of the spiritual infant tier, and even deity transformation tier cultivators would find it difficult to injure him. The winged lion only had the battle prowess of a cultivator at the peak of the spiritual infant tier, so what could it do against Ling Han? Shio, 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 shio. The winged lion kept up a barrage of wind blades. They possessed very powerful destructive power, and the dense patterns were incredibly terrifying, but Ling Han couldn't even bother to dodge them. He allowed the wind blades to hit him, but they merely sliced apart the clothes on his body, and were completely incapable of piercing his skin at all. They merely left behind a few white traces on it. Little lion, just obediently obey my will! Ling Han laughed loudly. He drew out a finger, and Sword Ray came into being, slicing towards the winged lion. Pooh! Instantly, the Sword Ray sliced the winged lion into two halves. It was formed out of spiritual chi, so there was naturally no spurting blood. The two halves of its body moved with great difficulty, trying to fuse back into one, but it was a pointless struggle as it was impossible to achieve. This was the power of Ray, its destructive power reached bone deep. Even if the attack had been delivered, destruction was still ongoing. Big Brother Han, you are becoming more and more powerful! Zhu Xian'er's beautiful eyes lit up. The more powerful the man that she loved was, naturally the happier she would be. Ling Han raised a hand and gave a pat on her asterisk, and said, "Don't keep tempting me." Her words were much too ambiguous, causing his thoughts to veer in an unspeakable direction, and he could not help his heart from throbbing wildly. Zhu Xian'er moaned, and it was as if her entire person had turned into a pool of water, soft and sweet, breathtakingly beautiful. Han! Hunyeo was upset, and crossed her arms over her chest, her little mouth pouting. Ling Han made another attempt to pull out the flag. This time, there was no winged lion pouncing out to stop him. He pulled out the flag, and the power of the strange winds in this mountain forest instantly weakened considerably. There wasn't only one array flag here, but there couldn't be that many either. Thus, merely pulling out flag would produce a great influence. This flag is not too bad. Xian'er, I'm handing it over to you. Ling Han threw the flag directly to Zhu Xian'er. It was not of much use to him. And Zhu Xian'er was very happy. As long as it was something that Ling Han had given her, she would be happy no matter what it was. Neo wants too. Hunyeo was very unhappy. Then, let's go and get another flag, Ling Han said, smiling. Only then did Hunyeo's anger turn into pleasure. She was a kid, after all. She'd be happy with just a little coaxing. Less than half a day later, they found the second array flag. After Ling Han had taken it, he tossed it over to Hunyeo, making the little girl very happy for a while. However, after playing with it for a while, she felt there was nothing fun about it, and threw it onto the ground, no longer interested. Zhu Xian'er picked it up off the ground. This flag was filled with suppression abilities for any ordinary spiritual infant tier cultivator, and if they had been in the north region, that was practically impossible to deal with. The three of them continued their sweep, and would take any flag they came across to make some easy money. Why have the power of the strange winds decreased suddenly? You're right. Furthermore, they are also changing directions less often. Haha, this time, I am sure I will be able to reach Ghost Lock Ravine in 3 days' time. After Ling Han had pulled out a few array flags in a row, the most direct result was the great decline of the difficulty of the test. If the higher-ups of the Restore Heaven Academy knew of it, their faces would probably turn green. Chapter 660 Ghost Lock Ravine. Chapter 660 Ghost Lock Ravine. Hen Yi. Ling Han had done it deliberately. The 5 ancient great sects were so despicable, so Ling Han would naturally be happy to give them some trouble. Moreover, the more people enrolled into the Restore Heaven Academy, the more parties would Ling Han be able to persuade into joining his camp. His goal was to establish a great empire and unite the whole realm. Thus, he would naturally not mind it if some parties were stronger, or some parties were weaker. Who cares, I'm merely here to conquer. Yet Ling Han did not dare go too far either. Otherwise he would become a target of the Restore Heaven Academy. Now, he could only act secretly, and once he had done what he wanted, he'd just run, and no one would know that it was him. After pulling out a total of 20 array flags, Ling Han, Zhu Xian'er, and Hu Niu finally set off towards Ghost Lock Ravine. When they arrived, it was already the second night, and there had long since been others who had entered ahead of them and began the second test in advance. Only those who entered here in 3 days' time would be qualified to enroll in the academy, and consecutively, whoever obtained the biggest number of stones, the most attention they would obtain from the academy. Hu Niu, let's go robbing! Ling Han laughed. And Hu Niu nodded crisply, instantly energized. Stuff like robbing was her favorite activity. Zhu Xian'er merely smiled, and looked at Ling Han tenderly. First and second brothers should have arrived long ago, Ling Han said. I wonder how good their harvest is. They journeyed in this ravine, yet saw wisps of fog enshrouding all their surroundings, making for a very spooky atmosphere. No wonder it had the name Ghost Lock Ravine. Ling Han! Ling Han! A call echoed behind them, and they turned to see Qin Lianyu had caught up with them. Her bountiful asterisk danced with her movements, like waves surging forth, looking very majestic. Oh, what a coincidence! Ling Han waved. Hadn't you all long since run ahead of me? Why have you arrived just a little earlier than me? Qin Lianyu was very confused. The scenery on the way was not too bad, so I spent some additional time to admire it, Ling Han said. Qin Lianyu rolled her beautiful eyes. This was definitely a lie. If she actually believed him, there would definitely be something wrong with her. However, her attention was soon drawn to the ravine, and she said, I heard that there really are evil ghosts sealed within this Ghost Lock Ravine. Really? Zhu Xian'er asked immediately, very curious. Of course it's real. It's rumored that it's an old evil ghost that is millennia old, terrifyingly violent and cruel. Qin Lianyu described vividly, frightening and dazing Zhu Xian'er. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Even shattering void tier cultivators only have a lifespan of over 1,000 years. What kind of old evil ghost is that amazing that it can live for several millennia? TSK, you don't understand. How could ghosts be the same as human beings? Qin Lianyu said disdainfully. What's the difference? Ling Han asked with a smile. How could Qin Lianyu actually point out the differences? She could only retort, I am not a ghost, so how would I know? Ling Han made no further jokes, and said, However, if there really were ghosts here, I really would like to take a look. Niu wants to see too. Hu Niu followed Ling Han's lead. What's there to see about ghosts? Qin Lianyu immediately shook her head. Zhu Xian'er also expressed her deep agreement. Girls feared this kind of thing the most. They advanced, and soon, they spotted Li Fengyu and his sister. That guy was really quite thick-skinned, forcing his way into their group, and formed a small team with Ling Han and the others. This place is so spooky, there can't really be ghosts here, right? Li Fengyu asked. Hey. Don't such inauspicious things! Everyone else exclaimed, feeling their hair standing on ends just from listening to him. The further they walked, the darker their surroundings became, as if it had become a ghostly zone. What's that? Li Zixian asked, pointing ahead. A bone. Hu Niu's eyes were sharp. The group walked forwards, and saw that there was indeed a bone on the ground. They did not know whether it belonged to an animal or a human, or how long the owner had been dead for, but they could still see the bone glowing as if it was a piece of treasure. "This is a human bone," Qin Lianyu said with absolute certainty. Ling Han nodded. This was indeed a human bone. When the owner had been alive, he must have been very powerful, because there were patterns left behind on the bone that formed some kind of inheritance. Now, these patterns were more or less worn away, but one could still how powerful it had once been. No existence could fight off the erosion of time. He felt very rueful. To be capable of forming patterns on even one's bones would require the cultivation level of the heaven tier at the very least, but so what? A few centuries and a few millennia later, all that was left behind was a pile of bones, and even the bones themselves would deteriorate before completely disappearing from the world. The bone seems to be shining. Li Fengyu was very curious, and was just about to dig the bone out, but his hand had just touched the bone when an incredibly bright, powerful flash of light appeared. Ping! He was instantly sent flying. Everyone was stunned. Was this the rise of the dead? But how was a dead corpse that had died who knew how many years ago, and whose bone patterns were almost worn away to nothing, supposed to rise? Ka 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 ka. The ground split open. Ping! A skeletal hand stretched out, followed by the second one. Then, they saw a skeleton crawl out of the dirt, and in its chest was a stone that was glowing with light. Wasn't that the stone they were supposed to fight over? Realization dawned on them. The secret to this skeleton being able to move even after death was this stone. It seemed to have turned this skeleton into a puppet, and caused it to move under its control. The skeleton exuded a powerful aura. Its cultivation level had, after all, been extremely high when it had still been alive. Even if its bone patterns were almost worn away to nothing after death, it was still overwhelmingly powerful. Peak of the spiritual infant tier. They all nodded. Charge! Hu Niu charged out, and engaged the skeleton in a fierce battle. This skeleton was really very strong. Its bones were protected by the patterns, and were thus incredibly hard. The strange stone was the source of its strength, allowing it to display battle prowess on the level of the peak of the spiritual infant tier. Theoretically, this skeleton was definitely not something that could be beaten by a cultivator in the spiritual infant tier, because in terms of defense, it was unbeatable. However, since the source of its energy was the stone in its chest, then one only had to remove the stone, and it would naturally be reduced to a perfectly normal pile of bones. This design made it extremely difficult to get a hold of the strange stone, but it was not completely impossible. Yet Hu Niu did not bother at all, and completely ignored the presence of the stone. Instead, she clashed against the skeleton endlessly with ping, ping, ping sounds. Zizizi, she used the power of lightning, and after every attack, the skeleton would shiver as if it was soon about to collapse and shatter. Everyone was dumbfounded. This little girl was really a violent maniac. She actually wanted to forcefully kill a skeleton that, to them, seemed impossible to kill in a head-on confrontation. They were all flushed as well, for they felt like they couldn't even match a little girl. After over a dozen moves, this skeleton monster was forcefully shattered apart by Hu Niu. The little girl picked up the stone, and scampered back to hand it over to Ling Han. After getting a praising pat on the head from Ling Han, she happily beamed with joy. How easily coaxed! Everyone else felt rueful over Ling Han's good fortune. He had actually managed to pick up such a powerful little girl as his loyal thug. It seemed like their luck was quite good. After walking for a while, they again found a bone on a spot, and when they came closer, indeed, another skeleton crawled out of the ground. There was a strange shining stone in its chest. This time, Ling Han attacked, and charged towards the skeleton. He attacked head-on as well, and did not have the slightest intention of a diversionary strategy at all, causing those who saw him grab their heads and declare him a monster in their shock. Chapter 661 Snatching Stones. Chapter 661 Snatching Stones. Henyi. Everyone felt speechless. An enemy they'd originally thought could only be dealt with using a roundabout strategy, but both Ling Han and Hu Niu chose a frontal strategy. Furthermore, it wasn't a rash move to show their superior might, either, as their terrifying power was right there for them to see. Ling Han wielded his finger like he was brandishing a sword, and delivered a slash in the direction of the skeleton monster. Shio, 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 shio. Sword rays swiftly slashed forth, accompanied by bright white lightning. The power of lightning had greatly increased the power of sword ray. One had to understand that the thunderclap ninth heaven was a mystical power, and Ling Han had reached minor accomplishment level in body of lightning. How could it not be powerful? The skeleton monster shook wildly from the electrocution, and the multiple flashes of sword rays sliced it repeatedly, leaving behind many slash marks on its bones. In theory, this kind of monster was definitely not something that could be injured by a spiritual infant tier cultivator, but who asked Ling Han's battle prowess to have exceeded the level of the spiritual infant tier? Sword ray together with thunderclap ninth heaven, his current battle prowess was worth 1 star of the deity transformation tier at least. Similarly, after a dozen overmoves, the skeleton was slashed to bits by Ling Han, and returned once again to the dirt from whence it came. Rest in peace, Ling Han said internally, feeling slightly displeased because the Restore Heaven Academy actually used the corpses of powerful cultivators who had died who knew how many years ago as tools from a certain aspect. What difference was there between them and the Thousand Corpse sect? Thinking about it closely, there really was not much difference between the two. The Thousand Corpse sect wanted to turn all the people of a whole realm into corpse soldiers, whereas the 5 great sects wanted to refine them all into an alchemical pill. They both wanted to destroy all life, so which one of them could declare themselves nobler? They were birds of the same feather. Ling Han picked up the strange stone. Indeed, it could not be stored away into the Black Tower or a spatial ring. It seemed like it had a life and will of its own. With a thought, he summoned the rock spirit and tossed the strange stone over to it. The rock spirit sniffed it for a while before suddenly opening its mouth widely. With a crack, it had swallowed the strange stone, and began to chew on it noisily like how a human being would chew on a bone. The sound caused the others to feel a soreness in their gums. That could actually be chewed on. Ling Han, why did you destroy the strange stone? Qin Lianyu gasped in shock after momentary shock. That's right. That is something that could help you become a core disciple, Li Zixian said. Ling Han smiled softly and said, It's all right. Anyways, there's more of it, so we'll just take things slow. The rock spirit would only eat stones that could increase its power. Since it was fond of eating it, that proved that this stone was of use to it. After the rock spirit finished eating, it leaned against Ling Han's leg and rubbed its head against him like it was a little puppy. But its strength was really too tremendous. One rub was enough to shake even the earth itself, which was incredibly terrifying. Thankfully, Ling Han had cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and possessed amazing strength himself. If not, with the rock spirit rubbing against him like that, he would have been sent flying, his bones and flesh shattered from the impact. Everyone else inhaled sharply. This puppet was very intelligent. It would actually take the initiative to play cute. Furthermore, that strength was really terrifyingly powerful. The rock spirit stared at Ling Han pitifully, its mouth open wide. If it was a human being, it would most probably be salivating by now. Ling Han knew that this guy was remembering that brick, but that brick had disappeared along with Helian Sun Shui. Even he could not find it. He did not know what had happened that sea girl would actually leave without a word. Here, I'll give you this too. He threw the other strange stone over to the rock spirit as well. The rock spirit grabbed it, and immediately began chewing. Though this was completely incomparable to the brick, but every little bit counted. It was a waste to refuse when Ling Han had given the strange stone to it. A thought flashed in Ling Han's mind. Since the first floor of the Black Tower was the source of earth, then could it nurture some kind of supreme strange stone to help the rock spirit increase its power? He immediately communicated with Small Tower and voiced the question with his divine sense. Yes. Small Tower replied crisply. Ling Han felt a bit like he was about to go crazy and asked, Then why didn't you tell me earlier? You didn't ask. Small Tower answered calmly. Ling Han felt a violent urge to beat someone up, and said, Fine then. Then give me a few hundred or a few thousand stones. If small tower actually had eyes, it would definitely roll its eyes at Ling Han. It gave a humph and said, Black Tower is still being restored, so how could there be so much chaos power to be expended? It can only supply a single stone every month or so. 1 stone per month, then. It was better than nothing. Then how are the effects? Ling Han asked. After eating 3, that rock man can break through to the spiritual infant tier. After 6, it can break through to the deity transformation tier. Small Tower replied calmly. Fuck, so awesome? Ling Han could not help but feel depressed. He worked so hard at his cultivation, but the rock spirit need only to eat a few stones and its cultivation level would gradually soar. Such a comparison could really drive him to a death by anger. Since it was so easy for the rock spirit to raise its level, Ling Han did not plan to feed strange stones to the big guy anymore. He laughed and said, Since you're full, then do your work responsibly. On. The rock spirit pounded on its chest like a rampaging gorilla. Everyone once again clicked their tongues in wonder. This puppet was really too human in behavior. They continued their way, and soon, they again spotted white bones buried underneath the ground. This time, there weren't that few in number either. They crawled out from underground, and charged to attack Ling Han and the others. They all used their respective strengths and began to add credit to themselves. However, the skeleton monsters were really too powerful. A spiritual infant tier cultivator would still have a chance with a roundabout strategy to take advantage of an opening to remove the strange stone, but flower blossom tier cultivators would not even have the opportunity to get near to it, as they would soon be sent flying away by the terrifying aura. The first round was still alright. Even though spiritual infant tier cultivators were powerful, the strange winds they suffered were even more powerful, and did not allow them too much of an advantage over their flower blossom tier peers. But here, the power advantage that spiritual infant tier cultivators had could be seen in full. After all, the first test was to pick those young men and women with good talent and strong determination, but this test was to pick out the geniuses among geniuses, so, naturally, only the cream of the crop would be able to charge out of the ranks. The rock spirit took the position of vanguard, and charged to attack those skeleton monsters. Yet it had just charged out when it was sent flying with a single punch, and shattered into a pile of rubble. Thankfully, its core was not broken, and it soon revived. AI, you are really undependable. Ling Han shot out himself, and Hun Yo gave an excited shout as well before joining forces with Ling Han. The two great monsters now attacked together, and even the skeleton monsters could only bear their resentment. Within a few moves they were shattered by their combined attacks, and the strange stones instantly dropped onto the ground. This thing could not be stored away into the Black Tower, and could only be kept on one's body, which made Ling Han very displeased as this seriously affected his image. Thankfully, this stone was only the size of his fist, otherwise, he would really go crazy. After half a day, he already had over 20 stones on him. Even though the light exuding from the strange stones was not too powerful, with 20 of them together, it still made for a grand scene. They made him seem almost like a light source, which illuminated brightly this gloomy and dark place completely. But this also made Ling Han into a live target. Soon, someone made a move against him, wanting to snatch away the stones, but the result was naturally that they were looted by Ling Han instead. Not only were the strange stones they had seized, even their spatial rings were taken and given to Ling Han as gifts. One day later, they all stopped to rest, and took out ingredients to cook. Suddenly, a young man dressed in green-colored robes appeared, an arrogant expression on his face as he coldly declared to the group, "Leave the strange stones behind, and you all can get lost." Chapter 662 Yuan Cheng He. Chapter 662 Yuan Cheng He. Hen Yi. Yuan Cheng He! Li Fengyu and Li Zixian both cried out in alarm simultaneously. "Ha, since you know who I am, why don't you scramble?" the young man in tight attire said with a sneer. Looking at the somewhat perplexed expression on Ling Han's face, Qing Lianyu explained. "Yuan Cheng He, a disciple of the magnificent Cloud sect, just like Wen Qian, had been in secluded cultivation while rigorously cultivating. None have heard about him before, however. In recent times, he had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and defeated quite a number of veterans from the spiritual infant tier. His strength is really formidable. Some have even compared him to be the equal of the likes of Yao Huiyu and the small Saber King. Ling Han shook his head and remarked, "The small Saber King and Lang Yitian are both already nearing their 40s. How old is Yao Huiyu? They are clearly of two different generations. How could they be placed on the same level to compare? However, I doubt that this guy could be stronger than Yao Huiyu. What are you still whispering and muttering about?" Yuan Cheng, he snapped, his voice laced with annoyance. Aware of his mighty reputation though they were, why did they not get lost? Li Fengyu said in a low voice, "I shall catch his attention and distract him while all of you leave first." He immediately transformed his face into a smiling expression and scampered over towards Yuan Cheng. "Big Brother Yuan, I am Li Fengyu. I have long heard of Big Brother Yuan's mighty reputation. It is my good fortune and honor to finally meet you today. As expected, Brother Yuan has an awe-inspiring presence, and could exude a golden brilliance just by merely standing there. The shine cast upon the innermost being of a little brother like me makes me feel as if there is another red sun in my life, guiding me on the direction of my path." His unending torrent of praises made Ling Han and the others stare at him in embarrassment upon hearing it. There was actually someone who could utter nauseating words in such a smooth manner without getting flushed at all, unlike them, who already felt almost like throwing up. The fact was, Yuan Cheng he was enjoying the compliments very much. His natural talent was alarmingly superior, yet he had previously been in secluded cultivation rigorously cultivating, and as such was isolated from the rest of the world, being akin to an ascetic monk. Still, his innermost being was actually of unparalleled arrogance, and yearned for the acknowledgement, worship, and adoration of others. Recently, at long last he became resplendent, and the vanity of his innermost being also naturally swelled all of a sudden. At this moment, being bootlicked by Li Fengyu immediately made every single compliment shoot straight into his bones, which left him feeling smug, and of course he would not consider the words to be nauseating in the least. After the incessant chatter, Li Fengyu felt his mouth had run dry. He then turned his head around, and saw that everyone's line of sight was centered on him, while their mouths were gaping open. He couldn't help but voice out impatiently, "I am already running out of words to say here," and had intended to repeat it once again from the beginning. "Why haven't the lot of you flee?" Ling Han bellowed out a hearty laugh, and responded, "Isn't this to see to what extent you could sing the praises?" He now had the confidence to even defeat the small Saber King under his sword. Was there any need to bolt just because of some rumors of Yuan Cheng? What a joke! Yuan Cheng reacted abruptly. He couldn't help but reveal his indignation as he exclaimed with rage, "You're good, you actually dare to hoodwink me!" Li Fengyu was scared out of his wits, and promptly took to his heels. Although he was also a genius, he was nowhere near the level of Yuan Cheng. Furthermore, he was even falling short by a whole cultivation tier. How would he dare to fight? "Brother Ling, show your strength!" he shouted. "You hateful guy, I want to kill, I want to thrash you!" Yuan Cheng roared. He originally intended to say that he wanted to slaughter the other party, but this test strictly prohibited any killing. He would not want to be disqualified from entering the Restore Heaven Academy just because of this. "Brother Ling, take care of this fellow, and I will gift you my sister as wife!" Li Fengyu shouted again. "Brother!" Li Zixian rebuked with a red face. How could he say such things? Wasn't it like betraying her already? Ling Han would not want this ugly woman. Hunyo charged forward in Ling Han's stead, not allowing Ling Han the opportunity to make a move. She transformed into lightning, and with a flash, appeared in front of Yuan Cheng. Her small fist struck out towards him in an attack. Yuan Cheng was startled. It never occurred to him that a wisp of a girl could actually have such speed, and even more so he would not have thought that she was of the same cultivation level as him. This was a hard blow to his confidence. He had always been very proud of his cultivation level. 27 years old and already in the spiritual infant tier was an unprecedented feat, yet now, a little girl of 7 to 8 years of age was impressively also at the spiritual infant tier. So what was there to take pride in? Clang! He drew out a treasured sword, but did not unsheath it, and only used the scabbard to block Hunio's oncoming fist. But the lightning surged through the scabbard and spread towards his arm. Hun! He gave a light humph. There were flames roving on his body which intensely collided with the onslaught of lightning. The martial intent transformed into dazzling rays of light as it mingled in the air and took different forms and shapes. Hunio agilely leapt into the air and somersaulted before retreating. Ling Han nodded his head. No wonder this person could be compared in strength with Yao Huiyu. He was indeed very strong, given that he could firmly withstand a blow from Hunio and not fall into a disadvantage. Not many at the spiritual infant tier could achieve such a feat. Little did they know, Yuan Cheng he was actually even more taken aback. He was immensely conceited, thinking that even those in Yao Huiyu and the small Saber King's class were no match against him. He had come to restore Heaven Academy to begin his legendary journey. Who would have guessed that had yet to enter the academy, and here randomly emerged a little girl who was already capable to fight him and be his equal in power. Although he did not use any ultimate techniques, but an expert could tell whether another had real ability once he made his move, and this little girl was not to be underestimated. Ugly, come and chase after Nyo! Hunyo provoked while clapping her hands. Yuan Cheng he grunted, and unsheathed his sword. He then called out, "The lot of you intend to let a little girl to fight for you. Humph, you have the nerve." Ling Han laughed as he countered. "You could not even defeat the youngest in our midst, yet you still want to challenge the others? You should thank us that we did not bully you, and just casually sent a little girl to play with you." These words were really fitting. A little girl of 7 to 8 years old could definitely be deemed as casually playing. Even if he were to tell others, who would believe that this little girl was a skillful master of the spiritual infant tier? Yuan Cheng he could not refute Ling Han's words. As such, he had no other choice but to hide his gloom inwardly. Who told him to encounter such a monster? "Hunyo, strike him down, I want to take him in as lackey," Ling Han said as he snickered. "Okay," Hunyo replied in a clear and crisp voice. "Just leave it to Neo." "Damn it!" Yuan Cheng he flew into a rage as soon as he heard it. He had the delusion of subduing him to become his lackey and treat him like any other small fry. He unsheathed his sword at once and charged in Ling Han's direction. "Your opponent is Neo!" Hunyo's figure nimbly fleeted in midair, and then appeared in front of Yuan Cheng he, her small fist aimed directly at his face. Yuan Cheng he had no choice but to tilt his head to one side to dodge the blow, at the same time thrusting his sword forward towards Hunyo. This could possibly be a formidable adversary who was not the slightest bit inferior to himself. How would he dare to allow his opponent to unrestrainedly strike him with blows? He could probably end up being hit to the extent that even this mother would not recognize him. The duo engaged in combat, thereupon launching into a battle in full swing right away. Yuan Cheng he was indeed of great strength, being able to face Hunyo head-on. At least, he did not look like he would be defeated any time soon. The onlookers clicked their tongues in wonder, and did not withhold their praise of his ability. One had to know that before this, even the skeleton monsters were toppled by Hunyo in a frontal attack. Yet Yuan Cheng he didn't know of it, and only heard what they said on the surface, so he felt exceedingly awkward. He had actually been reduced to such a sorry state that he could only be equal with a little girl. Ah! He let out a big howl. He was finally able to execute his ultimate technique. Amid the motions of his sword style, he appeared to have become a sword top rapidly swirling, slicing towards Hunyo. Over 20 flashes of sword chi swept over. It was fearful to the extreme. Chapter 663 Beaten into a Pig's Head. Chapter 663 Beaten into a Pig's Head. Henyi. Interesting. Ling Han nodded his head. There was a maximum limit to the sword chi that a cultivator could form only 30 flashes of sword chi at most. The physical strength was also limited, and the number of sword strikes that could be delivered by twisting the wrist in a split second similarly had an upper limit. However, after the fusion of sword and body, Yuan Chenghe's entire body moved, which, as a matter of fact, heightened greatly the might of his sword style. Originally, the strain was on the wrist, but now the whole body had actually blended in, so it had naturally reduced the burden on the wrist, which increased the frequency with which he could deliver sword strikes. Shadows of tens and thousands of swords simultaneously attacked, in addition to the sword chi. The force it emanated was alarming. "Don't want to play with you anymore." With a xiao, Hunyo transformed into lightning and dodged, moving at a remarkably swift speed. Even the blade of the sword could not catch up to her. Yuan Chenghe felt helpless. His sword style was exceptionally powerful, yet if it could not even hit the target, then what was the point? Encountering a quick opponent like Hunyo, he felt dispirited, not knowing where he should attack. He fixed his eyes on Linghan, then muttered to himself, "This guy would not also move as swiftly, would he? Fight me!" He lunged over in Linghan's direction since he was the one carrying the strange stones with him. "Nyo has returned again!" Hunyo yelled, and true to her words, she came storming back over, with her clenched fist poised to strike. Electric currents sparked rampantly as she sent her attack in the direction of Yuan Chenghe's back. Yuan Chenghe had no choice but to counter the attack, and he could no longer continue his course to attack Linghan. Every time, as soon as he used his ultimate technique, Hunyo would scamper off in a run. But afterwards she'd then promptly return yet again to attack, determinedly pestering Yuan Chenghe and making him lose his temper completely. "Little girl, don't run off if you have the guts!" Yuan Chenghe could not refrain from challenging Hunyo. He was fuming with anger at her antics. "Fine. I will stop running. You think Nyo is afraid of you?" Hunyo retorted, sticking out both her hands on her waist in a fearless stance. "Ugly people are always up to no good. See how Nyo will finish you off." Yuan Chenghe exulted on seeing this chance, and he leaped over his sword aimed to strike, charging to attack Hunyo. "Nyo is leaving!" Hunyo jeered as she ran off once again. Yuan Chenghe's attack naturally fell short again. Angry to the extreme, he laughed and exclaimed, "Going back on your words." He had only just started when he found he could not continue on with his words. How old was she? "Ha ha ha, you are so dumb, ugly guy. Nyo is only teasing you." Hunyo laughed gleefully while she pushed up her sleeves and boldly stated, "Fine then, this time I will be serious and beat you into submission." How would Yuan Chenghe fall from the same trick again? He was one of the prodigies of this generation, not a fool. Nyo's ultimate technique is unparalleled, and absolutely invincible. Anyone who sees it would be fearful. Any ghost who sees it is frightened by it. Super Tyrant Dragon Claws! Hunyo leapt out with both her hands formed into claws, aiming at Yuan Chenghe's chest. This time, it was for real. Yuan Chenghe was stunned, and hastily raised his sword in a slicing arc towards Hunyo. An immeasurable force burst forth, while more than 20 flashes of sword chi swept over, creating a breathtaking view amidst the vast sky. Hong! A terrifying collision created a small-sized mushroom cloud, while the shock wave from the clash forced away the fog in the surrounding, revealing bare earth. Fortunately, the whole ravine was practically barren with only bits and pieces of rocks. If not, this strike would surely have caused a great number of trees to suffer. Hit 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 hit! Hunyo's excited yell could be heard from amid all the dust. As the dust dispersed and the scene within lay clearly visible, it became apparent that Hunyo has already attained the complete upper hand and was on the offense, hitting Yuan Chenghe as she held him down, time and again striking him hard on his chest, hands, and face. Yuan Chenghe's face, which had been perfectly fine a moment ago, was now already deformed, the swelling akin to a pig's head, with bruises of green and purple all over, and looked very comical. Everyone cried out in shock. Hunyo was really too fierce. Even Yuan Chenghe was defeated in this little girl's hand. Pun! Hunyo landed another kick, which sent Yuan Chenghe flying. He glided to a stop just right beside Linghan's feet. Ling Han crouched down and laughingly asked, "Now do you concede?" "No, I don't." Yuan Cheng he snapped back with his head held high. He naturally would not concede. How would he be willing to be defeated by a little girl? "Then you can go on and continue being beaten." Ling Han also gave him a kick. Yuan Cheng he reflexively propped up both his arms to shield his handsome pig's face. Bang! He was sent flying back by Ling Han's kick, while Hu Niu rushed forth, and the fight started again. Bang, bang, bang! After merely a few rounds, Yuan Cheng he was yet again kicked and sent gliding back to Ling Han's feet once more. "So how is it? Still not conceding defeat?" Ling Han asked in amusement. "Of course not." Yuan Cheng he's character was quite unyielding. "Then go again." Ling Han once again sent Yuan Cheng he out with a kick. Gliding here and there, Yuan Cheng he was being treated like a ball being tossed around, revolving to and fro between Ling Han and Hu Niu. Qing Lian Yu and the others hissed. That was none other than Yuan Cheng he, the one reputed to be able to challenge Yao Huiyu, Small Saber King, and the likes of them. Yet now, he was actually being beaten to a state that he wouldn't even be able to tell which way north was. What a wimp. Not knowing how many rounds it had been, Yuan Cheng he once again glided to Ling Han's feet. This time, Ling Han did not even bother asking, and was in the motion of raising his feet to kick him and send him flying back when, much to his surprise, Yuan Cheng he actually shouted, "Concede, I concede!" Bang, he was still sent flying back. Sorry! I got used to kicking you back," Ling Han promptly exclaimed with a laugh. What a fuck **** lack of sincerity. Yuan Cheng he was swearing internally, and only managed to say one line before he was again being hit by Hu Niu's fist. Amidst the onslaught of fist after violent fist, he ended up lying at Ling Han's feet yet again. This time round, Ling Han at last did not kick him again. Instead, he was smiling as he remarked, "Since you have conceded, then come show your respects to your big brother." Yuan Cheng he got up, got his breath back, and said, "It was that little girl who defeated me, so unless you could show me strength that could make me concede, I would rather die than submit." "Not submitting?" Ling Han smiled. "Don't act steadfast with me. Even if you were straight, I could also make Li foam you, that blabbermouth, ramble away at you to make you bend. I've finally realized that you're the type that naturally wants to be beaten. All right then, I'll just give you another beating. Hee hee." Hu Niu ceased her onslaught of blows, and stood by the side with her arms crossed over her chest while enjoying the exciting exchange. With an indifferent expression, Yuan Cheng he spoke up. "As long as you can defeat me, only then will I acknowledge you as my boss." Ling Han gave the words some thought, then, with his left hand behind his back, he remarked, "How about this? I will fight you with only one hand, lest it is said that I bully you." "What arrogance!" Yuan Cheng he humphed. If Ling Han could really defeat him unarmed single-handedly, then he would accept the inevitable, and truly acknowledge him as his boss. He raised his sword to level while he uttered, "Then come face my 7 swords descend mountain." Boom! A wave of energy gushed forth and emanated from within his body, causing billows of dust, forming a ring which undulated in all directions. He was building up force. The power of this strike was definitely unparalleled. Ling Han did not rush to attack either. If he were to subdue this genius, then he certainly had to do it such that he was genuinely convinced. 7 swords, descending mountain. Yuan Cheng he delivered a strike. The first style, mountains exhaust and streams end. Rays of light bounced off the sword's blade and spilled forth, while the sword's energy encircled and besieged the target. One after another, again and again, the rays from the sword were all over the place. To be enveloped and wrapped in the sword's rays would definitely be mountain and river exhausted. Using his arm as a sword, Ling Han charged towards the opposing party. Sword intent flowed forth, making one feel that it was definitely an ultimate treasured sword without precedent. How ignorant! Seeing that Ling Han was actually intending to use his arm to block his treasured sword, Yuan Cheng he could not refrain from giving a snort. Was he planning to seek his own death? Chapter 664 Subdued. Chapter 664, Subdued. Reverie _ Henyi. Ding! Ling Han's arm collided with the treasured sword. Origin power ripples clearly couldn't be seen, yet a chain of sparks burst as if two metal weapons were clashing. Yuan Cheng, he was immediately dumbfounded. You dang weirdo, you're actually able to resist 7th tier spirit tool head-on? How can your body be so hard? He cried out. If I'm not a bit kick-ass, how can I be your boss? Ling Han said with a smile. You really got full of it. Yuan Cheng, he snorted. I admit that your physical body is extremely hard, but that's all it is. To defeat me, that alone won't be enough. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, You've got so much superfluous talk, got to change it in the future. I like people that prefer action over words. Dream on. Yuan Cheng, he shouted, and raised his long sword. 7 swords descend Mountain Yin, the second style, unleashing a horde of ghosts. Shio, 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 with fierce sword shadows, evil ghosts appeared from thin air and charged towards Ling Han. Oh, so it also has the effect of confusing the divine sense? Ling Han snorted lightly, and used his arm like a long sword to strike, causing sword lights to fly, all-conquering. He cultivated diamond body, and his physique was comparable to rare metal 1 tier higher in toughness. This meant that his arm was no different from a treasured sword forged from 8th tier rare metal, and the hand was part of him. The vein-like lines naturally interwove in every inch of his blood and flesh, more like a spirit tool than a spirit tool. One with the sword strike, the power of it was heaven-shaking. Pun! Yuan Cheng, he was instantly struck flying, and his entire body trembled violently. That was because Ling Han used the thunderclap 9th heaven, which made him numb all over. How about it, convinced yet? Ling Han said with a smile. Yuan Cheng, he was already half convinced. The opponent was definitely an expert in sword techniques. This sword ray could already prove it, but Ling Han used his arm as a sword, and was still able to fend off his ultimate move. This strength was obviously above his. However, he was still unwilling to admit defeat like this. His immersing diligently in cultivation for so many years was not so that he'd accept some boss. I'm not convinced. Yuan Cheng, he said with a straightened neck, and raised his long sword again. 7 swords descend Mountain Yin, the 3rd style, Yin mountain locks ghosts. Ling Hang laughed loudly, and with a flash, he turned into lightning, weaving in between the opponent's sword chi. Arriving right before the opponent, he thrusted the sword at Yuan Cheng He's face. Yuan Cheng He's face turned green. Not only did Hunyo know this move, but so did Ling Han. Pun! Ling Han formed a fist with his right hand, and fired it at Yuan Cheng He's face. The powerful energy surged by and instantly sent Yuan Cheng He flying. Yuan Cheng He fell on the ground, landing firmly on his back. He didn't have a strong physique, and he couldn't activate an origin power body shield just now, instantly making him groan in pain. Convinced yet? Ling Han said with a smile. No, not convinced. Yuan Cheng, he said, bracing himself. That's good, I was afraid you'd admit defeat too early. I hadn't fought to my heart's content. Ling Han laughed loudly, and charged up to launch a series of aggressive attacks. Pung pung pung, Yuan Cheng, he couldn't even move his sword now, being beaten by Ling Han. Everyone exclaimed inwardly for his misfortune. This guy's luck was truly terrible, first being trampled on by Hunyo, then trampled on by Ling Han, completely without any strength to fight back. Not that Yuan Cheng he wasn't strong, it was quite the contrary, he was really very, very strong. Amongst the younger generation, he could probably try for top 10, but Ling Han and Hunyo were too strong to the point of surpassing the limit of the younger generation. To suppress Ling Han and Hunyo, one had to be half to one generation older than them. For example, the geniuses above 30 years old, like Small Saber King and Lang Yatian. Otherwise, in the same age segment, there was probably no one that could rival Ling Han. Much less Hunyo. The majority of people hadn't even awoken their spirit bases at the age of 7 to 8, so how could they fight her? I admit defeat. After being beaten so terribly, Yuan Cheng he finally couldn't bear it, and admitted defeat. This was also because of the agreement earlier, or else he'd rather die and not give in. Ling Han smiled slightly, tossed out a few bottles of medicinal pills casually, and said, "The red bottle is for healing, the blue bottle can instantly recover origin power, the purple bottle can aid in cultivation, increasing your conversion of spirit chi by a fold." Not to mention Yuan Cheng his surprise, even the other people also jumped out of their own skin. Healing and recovering origin power were no big deal, but increasing conversion of spirit chi by a fold was truly shocking. For normal people, no matter whether it was the accumulation of origin power or comprehension of martial arts, either was slow, but both needed to be worked on simultaneously. As for geniuses, the comprehension of martial arts was relatively easier, so the accumulation of origin power was the greater restriction to them. Long story short, this was equivalent to increasing cultivation speed by a fold so precious. Yuan Cheng he was stirred up. He was forced to acknowledge Ling Han outwardly as a boss, rejecting it at heart, but now, this feeling of rejection began to dissolve. Having such a boss wasn't so bad, rich and generous. Ling Han smiled. Subduing someone was nothing more than applying kindness and might. After applying might earlier, now it was kindness's turn, and he wouldn't believe it wouldn't subdue this guy. "Thank you, boss," Yuan Cheng he said in a low voice, his face somewhat red. He'd never called anyone boss before. "Call me young Master Han in the future," Ling Han said. "Forget about boss and whatnot. We're not gangsters, that'd make us appear cheap." "Yes, young Master Han." Yuan Cheng he corrected smoothly, because Hunyo was staring at him with baleful eyes. Apparently, if he dared to respond wrongly, the little girl would give him hell. "All right, you can go. I'll call you if there's anything." Ling Han waved his hand. Yuan Cheng he was overjoyed. He thought Ling Han would send him here and there, like making him plunder rare stones or the like. Acknowledging this boss wasn't a loss. Look, although he took a beating, he also received replenishment of lots of medicinal pills, the preciousness of which definitely surpassed the beating he took. He was afraid that Ling Han would change his mind, so he hurriedly turned to leave. Young Master Han, I'll also take you for a boss. You can also bestow me some medicinal pills. Li Feng Yu said, puffing up his face. How about you become my sister's husband? Brother, Li Zixian said, gritting her teeth. Why did this brother of hers always want to sell her? Ling Han pondered and said, All right, I'll take you as an underling. Although Big Mouth Li's strength wasn't anything great, the special trait of having a big mouth actually had favorable uses. In the future, if Ling Han were to rope in geniuses from all sides, a propagandist like this was needed. All right, brother-in-law. Li Feng Yu fawned on him. Even Ling Han was speechless, and said, You're not afraid that someone will really seal your mouth one day? Hee, young Master Han. Young Master Han. Li Feng Yu didn't dare to talk foolishly anymore, because not only Ling Han revealed a displeased look, Hun Yo and Zhu Xian'er both revealed furious expressions as well. If he were to offend 3 people at once, then he would get more than he'd bargained for. Continue what? Ling Han was just about to let everyone continue to move on, but it suddenly shook underneath his feet. The ground let out a groan, and an extremely terrifying crack was extending from afar at an extremely fast pace. Shio, 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 everyone hurriedly flew up. The mist was dispersing quickly, and spider-web-like fissures appeared over the entire mountain valley. Earthquake? Everyone cried out. Ling Han looked into the distance, revealing a shocked look, and said, It's not an earthquake. A big guy's coming out. Chapter 665 Great Corpse Monster, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. Chapter 665 Great Corpse Monster, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. Reverie Henyi. That was truly a large one. Everyone revealed shocked looks. It was a colossal monster, 300 meters in height, and its entire body was made up of corpses. At least 10,000 corpses formed its current body, instilling fear into people as they beheld it. Each corpse seemed to come alive, extending its white bony arms and opening its mouth as if screaming. The land cracked open, and this colossal skeleton stood on the mountains, emitting a demonic godlike presence. Ling Han couldn't see through this monster's strength, because this guy wasn't a normal martial artist. It was assembled by over 10,000 corpses, somehow seeming to have obtained a second life. He only felt one thing: this monster was very strong and extremely powerful. This can't also be part of the examination that the Academy is giving us, can it? Li Fengyu swallowed his saliva, his eyes popping out. I'm afraid even the Restore Heaven Academy can't create such a monster. Ling Han shook his head. The objective of the 5 great ancient sects was for obtaining a realm pill once every 10,000 years, so they couldn't possibly research such a thing. To say it was the 1,000 Corpse sect was more likely. Wait, why were there so many skeletal corpses? Moreover, each skeletal corpse was so powerful, at least with the heaven tier cultivation, so could it be, this place was once a battlefield in the ancient times, the place of the final battle between the martial artists of the vast lands and the divine 5 great sects? Otherwise, how could there possibly be so many powerful ancient corpses? However, after these ancient corpses were buried for too many years, they evidently underwent an incredible change, turning into a corpse king. Over 10,000 heaven tier elites, even possibly with a few shattering void tier beings. Though having gone through countless years, the vein-like patterns on the bones remained, no longer having the divine brilliance at that time. The amount was there after all, so how terrifying would it be when combined? Go, 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 go! Ling Han said no more. He picked up Zhu Xian'er and Hu Niu, and dashed for it. After Qin Lianyu, Li Fengyu, and Li Zixian were startled momentarily, they also ran in a hurry. Even the most formidable Ling Han chose to run, so they sure as hell weren't fighting. However, some people didn't know fear, and even thought that this was part of the Restore Heaven Academy's examination, charging over enthusiastically. The colossal corpse waved its giant hand, and instantly stirred up a storm. The entire ground was lifted like a carpet, and the few that charged up were instantly smashed into minced meat, while the terrifying power continued to sweep towards the others. Pung, 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 pung. Ling Han and the others were instantly sent flying several kilometers away, each one of them hacking out blood repeatedly. It was also because Ling Han reacted quickly, immediately taking to his heels, or else, if they'd remained any closer, they'd have also been crushed into dust. Not only them, for there were also many people that were sent flying, but they were much worse off, as some had their arms broken, some their legs, and some their sternum. Except for a few people who just entered the mountain valley, simply hacking out blood, the other people were all severely injured. Even if the people here were all geniuses, they weren't even cannon fodder in front of this giant corpse monster. The gap was indescribably vast. With this one attack, at least 1/10 of those who'd passed the first stage's test met an untimely end. After this giant corpse monster let out an attack, it seemed to awaken from a daze. Crimson-colored rays came out from its 2 oculi, sweeping past the living creatures below as it revealed a frightening smile. This corpse monster actually possessed its own consciousness. Everyone felt a chill within. Corpse soldiers were equivalent to puppets no matter how strong they were, and could always be dealt with, but once its intelligence was unlocked, that would be terrifying. What could they do? It was apparent that this corpse monster targeted them, and wanted their blood and flesh as food. But being targeted by such a vicious monster, could they escape? Ling Han thought whether he should use the Black Tower. This corpse monster probably reached the Shattering Void tier level, and even surpassed normal Shattering Void tiers, being simply unstoppable. Humph, dare to run rampant here? At this moment, a figure appeared in the sky. It was a woman wielding a long sword. She looked only 30 years old and wore palace clothing, graceful and gorgeous, looking extremely charming. Ling Han's pupils involuntarily constricted. He couldn't see through this woman's cultivation at all. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress! Qin Lianyu and Li Fengyu cried out simultaneously, looks of extreme admiration on their faces. Azure Divine Phoenix Divine Empress, Cloud Phoenix Sect's current sect master, a Shattering Void tier elite. No, based on Feng Pian's statement, not only was she in the Shattering Void tier, but also in its peak stage, the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. In terms of tier, she was number one in the present age. Being able to become the leader of one of the 5 great sects, how could Azure Divine Phoenix Empress not be a martial arts genius? It wasn't known how many hundreds of years old she was, yet she looked only in the 30s, her skin beautiful like jade, filled with elegant qualities. The corpse monster seemed to be somewhat fearful of Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, and didn't attack immediately. Instead, it roared angrily towards the sky, and an eerie phenomenon occurred. A row of eyeballs grew on its face, exactly 9 of them. Each eye emerged in a different color, but all were inclining towards blood red without exception, emitting a threatening and frantic presence. Nine-Eyed Corpse King! Ling Han finally recalled a monster that appeared in legends. What Nine-Eyed Corpse King? There was no lack of curious people here, still having the mood to inquire at this time. Ling Han brought everyone to retreat as he said. Based on the 1,000 corpse sex classification of corpse soldiers' strength, altogether there's bronze armored corpse, silver armored corpse, gold armored corpse, the 3 large levels, with each including 3 small levels. So, we have a total of 9 levels, conforming with the 9 tiers of martial arts from body refining to heaven tier. And reaching shattering void tier, the corpse soldier would be called a corpse king. The corpse king's strength is gauged based on how many spare eyes it grew, and 1 more eye is equivalent to 1 layer of tier. Everyone was shocked and said, So that corpse king possesses cultivation at the 9th layer of the shattering void tier? Ling Han nodded, but the anxiousness on his face lessened significantly because Azure Divine Phoenix Maiden was consummate shattering void tier elite. Even if she wasn't a super genius, as long as she possessed battle prowess that corresponded to her tier, she wouldn't be weaker than the Nine-Eyed Corpse King. This Corpse King had just evolved as expected, but once it formed, it possessed the strength of 9 eyes, truly shocking. Nine-Eyed Corpse King? Azure Phoenix Divine Empress also snorted, and held out her long sword. Wang, vein-like patterns flashed, extremely resplendent. Heavenly Phoenix Sword! Ling Han cried out, the look in his eyes extremely complicated. This sword was the one used by Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden in previous years, but this sword had been only a 9th tier spirit tool, and now it crossed into the 10th tier. Apparently, after Heavenly Divine Phoenix Maiden charged into the Shattering Void tier, she also nourished this treasured sword into a 10th tier spirit tool. Seeing something that reminded him of her, Ling Han was obviously extremely moved. Say, boss, you fix your eyes on Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, leering, could you be moved? Li Fengyu went off with his big mouth again. Chapter 666 True Phoenix Bloodline. Chapter 666 True Phoenix Bloodline. Reverie _Henyi. Move? Move your sister's heart! Ling Han couldn't help but lash out with a hit. Li Fengyu turned pale and said, You've got wild schemes about my sister as expected. This, say, brother-in-law, let's discuss the problem of dowry. Brother! Li Zixian finally erupted and smacked at Li Fengyu. Not only her, Zhu Xian'er and Hun You also joined delightedly, and beat this big mouth into screaming repeatedly, making him pay the price for having a cheap mouth. Azure Divine Phoenix Empress raised the long sword and struck towards the Nine-Eyed Corpse King. A shattering void tier attack was too frightening. The sword ray flew through the skies and hung, stars exploded from the sword light, turning into countless fragments and sprinkling over the corners of the vast lands. The Nine-Eyed Corpse King was calm and fearless. Pun pun pun, it tread on its massive feet towards Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, dashing at an extremely high speed, and the corpses on its upper body let out shrieks one after another, shooting out as tangible sound waves. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress snorted heavily, and also let out a battle cry as if a phoenix's cry. The sound wave manifested and turned into an Azure Divine Phoenix, countering Nine-Eyed Corpse King's sound waves. Pung pung pung, the sound waves collided, and martial intent of both clashed violently, casting extremely resplendent rays of light upon the skies. In the sky, countless stars exploded in shock and fell down in small fragments, but the majority couldn't pass through the terrifying layer of astral winds in the sky, being shattered into dust. The Nine-Eyed Corpse King's sound wave attack was neutralized by Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, but the aftershocks swept by and still sent the people who had already escaped the mountain valley flying. Like severed kites flying in the sky, they landed uncontrollably and hacked out blood one after another. Even if neutralized, a shattering void to Elite's attacks remaining aftershock of the aftershock was still filled with shocking destructive power. If the people here weren't at the Flower Blossom or the Spiritual Infant, then under this attack, they wouldn't just be hacking out blood, they'd all be dead. Even so, Flower Blossom cultivators all had a few broken bones, while Spiritual Infant ones were slightly better, simply hacking out a few mouthful of blood. Ling Han took Zhu Xian'er and Hu Niu into his embrace and forcibly took the attack on with his own back. With his current physique comparable to 8th to rare metal, forcibly taking this sound wave attack only made him look somewhat pale, but not to the extent of hacking out blood. "Brother-in-law, help!" Li Fengyu's face was full of blood, unsure whether it from beating just now, or from being shocked by the wave. As expected, so long as he lived, he'd keep on acting cheap. "Ha ha ha, what the heck were you guys doing, looking so tragic?" The rabbit appeared with a carrot in its mouth. Who knew whether it was found or stolen from somewhere? With so much chaos, it could obviously feel it, running over to watch the fun. "No kidding, two great shattering void tier elites battling, can't you see for yourself?" Ling Han said in a foul tone. "Yo, this little girl's not bad, just right to be Uncle Rabbit's servant girl." The rabbit stared at Azure Phoenix Divine Empress while gnawing on the spirit medicine, its ruffian character fully displayed. Ling Han sighed and said, "Li Big Mouth, you've met a kindred spirit, come, become sworn brothers with the rabbit." "Tisk, what's Uncle Rabbit identity? Uncle Rabbit wouldn't even be pleased if this brat was a distant 18th generation grandson." Uncle Rabbit disparaged Li Fengyun as being worthless. Li Fengyu wasn't irritated, and simply said to Hu Niu, "Lord Hu Niu, let's eat rabbit meat." "All right." Hu Niu instantly beamed with joy. Her fierce eyes targeted the rabbit's buttocks. Her small mouth broadened, and saliva already drooled out. The rabbit instinctively covered its butt and said, "Damn brat, dare instigate this little girl again. Be careful, Uncle Rabbit will step on your golden face." Ling Han grabbed Hu Niu and didn't let them cause a disturbance at this moment, and said, Come, carry a few rocks over. We're watching the show here. It should be safe at this distance." His gaze swept by, and seeing the Rain Emperor and Murong Qing, he naturally felt relieved. Azure Divine Phoenix Empress and the Nine-Eyed Corpse King battled fiercely. This was the strongest battle at the Shattering Void tier, something even Ling Han had never seen in the previous life, so it wasn't to be missed. Earlier, Feng Piyun also showed his hand at Million Treasures City, but with the fourth killing formation's impediment, no one could see the specifics of the battle. However, it was different now. The Nine-Eyed Corpse King was over 300 meters tall, and could be clearly seen anywhere. Ling Han also cultivated the Eye of Truth, and obviously saw it even clearer. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was truly strong, a consummate Shattering Void tier elite. In this world, she could be said to be unstoppable, and on top of the 10th tier spirit tool in her hand, the Heavenly Phoenix Sword, her destructive power was incapable of further increase. Even though the corpses on the Nine-Eyed Corpse King's body were once in the Heaven tier, even some others were in the Shattering Void tier, deep sword marks appeared on them with a sword strike. It was just that the Nine-Eyed Corpse King's body was just too colossal, and being slashed by a sword was like a normal person being cut by a nail clipper, suffering a tiny injury. The Corpse King wasn't a normal corpse soldier. Such an existence already formed its own consciousness as if a new life was bred, becoming a new species in the world. It wasn't in pain, yet it went into a violent rage. The corpses all over its body raised their heads to roar in anger, and the sound waves turned into a gigantic spear, held by the Nine-Eyed Corpse King, piercing at Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. "Evil creature, leave your head!" Azure Phoenix Divine Empress shouted as Heavenly Phoenix Sword struck out a sword ray over 300 meters long, looking terrifyingly shocking. The Nine-Eyed Corpse King roared violently repeatedly. Its physique was too tough under the blessing of vein-like patterns. It was no inferior to 10th to rare metal. If it weren't for Azure Divine Phoenix Empress using a 10th tier spirit tool to strike it, and her condensing of a sword ray, she really might not have been able to deal with its defense. It waved its two arms and closed them towards the middle, trying to clap Azure Phoenix Divine Empress to death. Pa! The two large palms closed and let out a heaven-shaking great bang. 99% of the people nearby bled from the 7 apertures, being too horrible a sight to look at, while some were even knocked right out with this great bang. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was actually clapped to death like this. Hong! A raging azure flame burst forth from the skeletal palms and turned into a sky full of flames brighter than the sun. The nine-eyed corpse king bawled and hurriedly retracted its hands. Azure Divine Phoenix Empress could be seen standing loftily in the skies, and her entire body burned with azure-colored divine flames, forming a fiery tailpiece over 3,000 meters long. It made her looking even more beautiful and alluring. This woman isn't a pure human. Uncle Rabbit can sense a shred of true phoenix bloodline in her body. The rabbit said while gnawing on a spirit medicine. However, compared to Uncle Rabbit's pure bloodline, she's far off. As expected, she's more suited to become Uncle Rabbit's servant girl. True Phoenix Bloodline. Chapter 667 The 10th Eye. Chapter 667 The 10th Eye. Reverie _Henyi. True Phoenix. In the legends, true phoenixes were on par with true dragons, and true dragons were the strongest of divine beasts. 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art, which Ling Han cultivated, used 9 dragons as a power standard, and it was precisely because the power of dragons was the strongest. Divine beasts, blessed by heaven, didn't need to cultivate at all. At maturity, they possessed terrifying strength, and the power of true dragons could even shatter the firmament, breaking open the universe, and it became God Realm's measurement standard for power. Of course, martial artists cultivating could still surpass the power of 9 dragons, or else there wouldn't be the saying of the power of 9 dragons. But here, the power of true dragons and true phoenixes was definitely the limit of the extreme. If Azure Phoenix Divine Empress could truly possess the complete power of a true phoenix, then with an arbitrary slap, this corpse king would disperse into a pile of bones again. The 5 great sects were all based on inheritance from the divine plane, like how Zi Shuexian was a descendant of a great race related to thunder there, being extremely powerful. Thus, since Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was also extremely likely to be a descendant from the God Realm, possessing a shred of true phoenix bloodline wasn't anything strange. The 9-eyed corpse king actually revealed a fearful look. For corpse soldiers that weren't afraid of death and didn't know pain, this was an incredible thing. That was also because the 9-eyed corpse king's level was too high, deriving its own consciousness, so it knew how to measure the situation it was in. However, brutality was all that was in corpse soldiers after all. It soon suppressed the fear in its heart, and with a loud roar, Chang, 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 bone spikes grew out from all over its body. Each spike was over 30 meters long, making it look like a hedgehog. The corpse king charged at Azure Phoenix Divine Empress again. Each bone spike had gray-colored vein-like patterns that lit up, emitting a presence of despair. Ling Han turned pale with shock and said, "Not good!" The thing that Zhu Xian'er and the others feared the most now was hearing Ling Han say, "Not good." Each time he said "not good," something not good would definitely happen. "Brother-in-law, can't you not say not good?" Li Fengyu said, shivering. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "This corpse king has just awakened, opening 9 eyes simultaneously earlier, and now it grew out bone spikes. I assume it's still in the process of fusing with those corpses, and hasn't reached its complete form." Qin Lianyu turned pale with fright and said, "You're saying that after it completes the fusion, it'll become even stronger?" "Inevitably." Ling Han sighed. Hiss. Now, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was only tied in battle with the 9-eyed corpse king. If this corpse king became even stronger, wouldn't it mean that even Azure Phoenix Divine Empress be unable to suppress it? Seeing this corpse king's appearance, it seemed like it could fuse with more corpses, and if Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was killed and her corpse absorbed as well, then how powerful would it become? It would probably break through the Shattering Void tier's limit and cross into the God tier. Everyone's hands and feet turned cold. If it really turned out so, no place in the entire world would be pure. All would be killed off completely by this corpse king as it devoured flesh and blood and fused with skeletal remains, evolving into the strongest corpse soldier in history. Ling Han even thought of how this had to do with Thousand Corpse Sect. This should be an ancient battlefield. The experts from the 5 sects of God Realm descended and fought the ultimate battle here against rebels, and the final end was obviously burying the prosperous martial arts aged 10,000 years ago. The Thousand Corpse Sect was also a great sect in the God Realm, certainly having means to escape the refinement of the Pill Realm in the end, so they could secretly tamper with the corpses which should have rotted here, turning them into corpse soldiers. With the 5 great sects keeping watch, they also didn't dare to act brazenly, and could only do things slowly, resulting in the creation of this monster. Probably. Ling Han couldn't be sure, but he could conclude that this definitely had to do with the Thousand Corpse Sect. After growing out bone spikes, the Corpse King's battle prowess increased drastically. Each bone spike was equivalent to a heavenly spear, covered in vein-like patterns, and could even pose a great threat to Shattering Void tier elites. Even Azure Phoenix Divine Empress didn't dare to oppose it directly, and kept moving around to dodge the sharp edges. After all, her physique couldn't be compared to the Corpse King's. However, she didn't dodge randomly, and constantly counterattacked with the long sword, unleashing shocking sword rays. Moreover, her tailpiece was also completely formed by flames, and as it whisked, it also created considerable disturbance for the Corpse King. That was definitely no ordinary fire, its destructive power shocking, and it left burnt marks on the Corpse King's body when sweeping past it, burning the skeletons into ash. In the short term, the 2 elites were evenly matched. Nevertheless, it was just as Ling Han had said, this Corpse King was actually like an infant that was just born. At the start, it only had pure instincts, which was its natural tendency to kill, so it had been moving based on its instincts. However, as the battle progressed, it understood how to use power, and also seemed to grow, becoming more and more terrifying. This change was extremely evident. The skeletal corpses on its body were in the process of fusion, and the bones coalescing looked as if they weren't hard bones, but instead made of sand. In the process of the fusion, the Corpse King's body also shrank slowly, but its power was increasing. Ling Han shivered within and said, "Earlier, it was 10,000 corpse soldiers attacking together, but now it's 1,000, then to 100, and lastly just 1 will be remaining." Everyone was smart, and immediately understood. The decreasing amount wasn't a good thing, and on the contrary, this was the worst of the worst outcome possible. No matter how 10,000 people worked as one, could the power they unleash reach the layering of 10,000 shares of power? Definitely not. However, with 1,000 people, and each person's power multiplied by 10, attacking jointly, whose power would you say was stronger? Not to mention 100 people, 10 people, or when 1 was remaining, if the power was multiplied by 10,000, then that would completely equal the power of 10,000 people, not being a single bit reduced. The Corpse King was in the process of advancing in this direction. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress evidently also saw it, for her sword strikes became more rushed. Pu, sword rays slashed on the Corpse King's body and kept sweeping away broken bones, but with the Corpse King's colossal body, this was no big deal at all. Moreover, as its body shrunk, the Corpse King's power became stronger, and the defensive area still continued to shrink. This wasn't delightful news. After half a day, the Corpse King's body already shrunk by half, and was only over 150 meters tall. The crimson light in its eyes was fiercer by more than 1-fold. Looking at it could bring pain in one's heart to the point of bursting. Pa! The Corpse King's movements halted as another eye actually grew out from its forehead. A 10th eye. 9 eyes was the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, so what about 10 eyes? It definitely couldn't reach the God tier, but its battle prowess increased by at least 1 star. The battle prowess of the Shattering Void tier elites was extremely terrifying to begin with, and to increase their battle prowess by 1 star was as hard as climbing the skies. Now, the Corpse King fused its body even further, and finally obtained a qualitative change. The aura over its entire body grew explosively, hung, and the entire Ghost Lock Ravine collapsed. The Corpse King attacked again. Its bone spikes were heaven-shocking, collapsing stars in the sky, just as if world was ending. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress finally revealed a cautious look, reaching out with her hand to swipe the Heavenly Phoenix sword, and said, "Open!" Wang, the vein-like patterns on Heavenly Phoenix sword lit up again, and was several hundred times more powerful. A giant colorful phoenix flew out from the blade as if a divine spirit descending to earth, emitting endless divine might. Tool Spirit. A 10th tier Tool Spirit. Chapter 668 The Ninth Underworld King Appears. Chapter 668 The Ninth Underworld King Appears. Reverie Henyi. Linghan felt a familiar presence. This was Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He'd been tormented by her countless times in the previous life, resulting in him being extremely sensitive towards this kind of aura. In the later periods, he could sense it when Heavenly Divine Phoenix Maiden hadn't even approached in a 5-kilometer radius, and would immediately take to his heels. Now Linghan was left with endless yearning. Heavenly Phoenix appeared, and with a sharp cry, charged the Corpse King. This Heavenly Phoenix was at least 350 meters long, and with its wings spread, it even reached 660 meters in width. In front of it, the Corpse King immediately became similar to a kid. Its speed was too fast, and with a flutter of its wings, it dove before the Corpse King. Without any mystic arts, it just tore with its claws and pecked with its beak, yet caused terrifying destruction. The Corpse King roared angrily, but was totally suppressed by the Heavenly Phoenix. Its entire body fell towards the ground and reached out with both hands to push the Heavenly Phoenix, but its hands were burnt black. Such a terrifying spirit tool! Linghan compared it to Demon Birth's sword, and instantly felt that Demon Birth's sword was pathetically weak. However, he never fully unleashed Demon Birth's sword's true might, and for it to become a 10th tier spirit tool, how could it be ordinary? His tier was too low, after all. Shio! At this moment, a flash of saber light swept by. It was undoubtedly light, yet it was extremely dark, as if gloomier than the dark night, emitting the presence of death. This saber strike was going straight for the Heavenly Phoenix. "You dare!" Azure Phoenix Divine Empress moved with her sword, and arrived before the saber light in a flash. With a slash of her sword, her attack turned out to be a 300 meters long sword ray. Pun! A heavy bang resonated, and everyone's ears instantly went deaf. Completely unable to hear sounds, the entire world seemed to become extremely quiet, and only the Corpse King and the Heavenly Phoenix were carrying out a soundless fight. "Divine Empress, long time no see." A faint voice came from afar. It was gentle and soft, yet filled with a ghastly cold presence, as if coming from the Underworld itself. "Ninth Underworld King!" Azure Phoenix Divine Empress said word by word. A chilling glare burst within her eyes, and her aura immediately increased by several folds. Linghan was shocked. This was Azure Divine Phoenix Empress's true strength. Earlier, she had been just playing around with the Corpse King? Who was the 9th Underworld King? Far away, that voice went on. "This lord came here only to take what this sect has left here several thousand years ago. Why must Divine Empress act as if confronted by a formidable enemy? Humph, you even dared to scheme for this place. Is the Thousand Corpse sect inviting its own destruction?" Azure Phoenix Divine Empress said in an icy tone. Linghan instantly realized that this 9th Underworld King was Thousand Corpse sect's sect master, or else he definitely wouldn't have the right to converse with Heavenly Divine Phoenix Empress and make Azure Phoenix Divine Empress intentionally hold back, waiting for the appearance of the 9th Underworld King. "You guys eat meat, so can't you give this sect some soup to drink?" 9th Underworld King said indifferently, appearing extremely calm. However, his voice was truly horrifying, just as if it were coming from the Underworld, and hearing it would make one's soul freeze. "Since the ancient times, good and evil have been incompatible, and annihilating you all is our responsibility. Azure Phoenix Divine Maiden determinedly. Good! In the surrounding, all the geniuses that participated in the exam raised their arms and called out in support. The Thousand Corpse sect was a target of scorn, which everyone called out to kill. Linghan shook his head inwardly. The 5 sects and the Thousand Corpse sect were actually birds of a feather, none any better than the other. However, the 5 sects did it cleanly, using 10,000 years to brainwash the realm, and now these people were just suckers being betrayed. Just thinking about it was woeful. The greatest woe was that even if you reminded them, they'd think you were saying frightening things to intentionally ruin the 5 great sects' reputation. Those able to think calmly were the meager lot. The 9th Underworld King wasn't irritated, and said, "There are too many confused people in the world. If this lord wrote all the dirty work you guys have done into a short story and sold it to the entire world, would you say that there'd be people who'd believe it? As long as one person believes, a seed would be planted, and the seed would become a towering tree sooner or later. Spread fallacies to deceive people, and this Empress will cut you down today." Azure Phoenix Divine Empress said coldly, and charged where the 9th Underworld King was with her sword. 1. A flash of saber light soared into the sky as a lofty man appeared, holding a large dark saber. Dark light intertwined around his entire body, and he was as if a demonic god that could support the firmament and crumble the underworld. This was Thousand Corpse Sect's 9th Underworld King? In comparison, Rong Huanxian was a small fry relying on 3 lives casket to run rampant. He was in no way comparable with the 9th Underworld King at all. Then let this lord experience the Divine Empress's sword techniques. The 9th Underworld King waved his saber and engaged her in a fight. It was obviously also a 10th tier spirit tool, and it was one of Thousand Corpse Sect's 3 great sect treasures, Demonic Noise Saber. Who? As the Demonic Noise Saber was swung, an extremely strange sound resonated, and the sound waves manifested into countless monsters with sabers, swords, and weapons, slashing at Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. "Battle up in the skies!" Azure Phoenix Divine Empress soared towards the skies. "As you wish!" The 9th Underworld King also soared into the skies. The 2 great shattering Void Tier warriors engaged in a great battle, but 9th Underworld King's weapon had the advantage, because Heavenly Phoenix Sword's spirit tool already left the sword and was in a fierce fight with the Corpse King. Now, Heavenly Phoenix Sword was just a sharp 10th tier weapon, and not a spirit tool. For elites at their level, a small gap could influence the outcome of the battle, let alone a tool spirit's presence. At the scene, the 9th Underworld King had complete advantage, but it also wasn't easy for an elite at this level to be defeated. Azure Phoenix Divine Maiden could sustain her resistance for a long, long time, and when Heavenly Phoenix Sword's tool spirit suppressed the Corpse King, the situation in their battle would change again. Hee! 9th Underworld King was composed, not at all rushed, and said, "Divine Empress, you think this sect waited several thousand years just for a normal Corpse King?" As he spoke, that Corpse King underwent another transformation. Its body shrunk again and became only 60 meters tall, but its forehead manifested another eye. An 11th eye. Instantly, the Corpse King's might grew greatly, and it shook off the Heavenly Phoenix with a single attack. It opened its mouth and spat out a dark light, which was as if shackles, wrapping around the Heavenly Phoenix. This light was extremely fast as it bound the Heavenly Phoenix, tightening, and actually manifesting, with bone spikes firing out, piercing into the Heavenly Phoenix's body. The Heavenly Phoenix cried in pain, and as it flapped its wings, large constellations of stars were shattered in the sky. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress revealed a shocked look and said, "You retrieved the pond of the Underworld. If it weren't for the pond of the Underworld's water's blessing, the Corpse King definitely wouldn't break through the limit of 10 eyes." She should have known. It was just that the Thousand Corpse sect had long lost the knowledge of the whereabouts of their 3 great sect treasures several tens of millennia ago. "Correct," the 9th Underworld King said loftily. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress thought shortly, suddenly realizing something, and said, "The pond of the Underworld was within Million Treasures City. So that's why you spent so much effort scheming to take down that city." As expected of the Divine Empress, how truly exceptionally intelligent! The Ninth Underworld King applauded. To nourish this Corpse King, this Lord took all of the pond's water, convinced that this Corpse King can at least evolve into a 15-eyed one. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress's countenance changed again and again. This time, she finally felt it difficult to handle. Chapter 669 The Sword King Intervenes. Chapter 669 The Sword King Intervenes. Reverie _Henyi. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was filled with fear. No one knew that the Thousand Corpse sect actually had their eyes on this place several thousand years ago, and deliberately laid out special formations to transform the countless corpses underground, fusing them into a Super Corpse King. One had to know that there weren't just living beings buried from the Great Battle 10 millennia ago. There were powerful elites from 20 millennia, 30 millennia, and even 100 millennia ago here too. The 5 great sects were just repeating the experience every 10 millennia. The Restore Heaven Academy, for example, existed 10 millennia ago, and 100 millennia ago, constructed here as well. But, at the time, Nine Dragons Mountain wasn't called Nine Dragons Mountain. This had always been one of the 3 great battlefields where the 5 great divine sects fought the final battle against the martial artists of the vast lands. Over several hundred millennia, how many elites were buried? The majority obviously were wasted into ash, but the skeletal remains of the elites in the recent 100 millennia were mostly preserved. Although some were heavily damaged, there was still no match for the amount of corpses here. Tens of thousands of corpses of elites fused together, combined with Thousand Corpse sect's most valuable treasure, the water from the pond of the Underworld, which could even resuscitate the martial intent in some of the corpses. So how strong would the Corpse King become? You guys have taken over this world for too many years. It's time to yield it to us, the Ninth Underworld King said dully. Nonsense! Azure Phoenix Divine Empress snorted. She knew the Thousand Corpse sect created such a Corpse King in order to resist the elites that would descend from the divine plane. True gods could unleash divine power at key moments, firing out attacks that couldn't even be blocked by the shattering void to their opponents. However, if this Corpse King continued to grow, it would truly reach the level of gods, and stand off against them. It didn't really need to fight off gods. As long as it could block one of a god's attack, then the god would be ejected by the rules of this world. An extremely great price had to be paid to come here from the god realm, and not many people could be sent here. The reasons to choose to refine all living things every 10 millennia were, firstly, it was necessary to give the vast lands time to recover, allowing martial arts and the environment to reach the pinnacle again. Secondly, the price was too great to send gods down often, and it could only be done once every 10 millennia, or else even the 5 great divine sects would be pained. Then Divine Empress, it wouldn't hurt to watch idly, the Ninth Underworld King said indifferently. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress sneered and said, Don't you forget, the Restore Heaven Academy isn't established by my sect alone. Did you really think that this Empress was the only shattering void tear that keeps watch here? Ninth Underworld King, seems like your cultivation has progressed again. Right as Azure Phoenix Divine Empress finished her words, a man in white clothing also appeared in the sky, a sword map spread open behind him, glowing resplendently. Sword King! The Ninth Underworld King's eyes contracted. He seemingly felt more fearful of him. Ling Han saw everything, and couldn't help but feel it strange. According to Feng Pian's information, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was already a consummate Shattering Void tier elite, but the Sword King obviously hadn't reached the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress even possessed true Phoenix bloodline, so no matter how he thought about it, she should be the more powerful one. However, by the look of 9th Underworld King's expression, he seemed to be more fearful of Sword King, which was something quite surprising. Sword King placed his hands behind his back, his expression calm as he said to Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, Divine Empress, should I first help you kill this fiend, or kill that Corpse King first? Corpse King! Azure Divine Phoenix Empress said unhesitatingly, and with a phoenix cry, the heavenly phoenix flew back into the heavenly phoenix sword. The tool's spirit returned, and this 10th tier spirit tool was also restored to its strongest state. "All right," Sword King said insipidly, appearing extremely calm and unrushed. He closed his fingers, shaping them like a sword, and struck towards the Corpse King. A terrifying scene appeared. He actually fired out a sword ray over 600 meters long, slashing towards the Corpse King. A sword ray's length decided the sword ray's power. He only used his fingers to unleash sword chi, yet it was more frightening than Azure Phoenix Divine Empress using a 10th tier spirit tool. No wonder it was he who was the Sword King. The Corpse King placed its arms before its body, forcibly taking this sword ray on. Pooh! Its arms were instantly left with a deep sword mark, and its entire body was pressured into sliding backwards, shoveling out 2 deep ditches. The Corpse King roared angrily, yet didn't dare to charge over to fight, which came to many people as a surprise. The Sword King actually terrified the Corpse King. Who could believe it? The 9th Underworld King coughed lightly and said, "Since the two of you have appeared, this lord might need to be more serious." He sucked in with his mouth and let out a strange call, and instantly, 7 ancient caskets slid over from afar. Ping, 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 the casket lids flew off, and 7 corpse soldiers jumped out from within. 9 eyes, 9 eyes, 9 eyes, all of them were 9-eyed Corpse Kings. "You guys play with Divine Empress. As for the Sword King, let this lord handle it." The 9th Underworld King shook the demonic noise saber lightly. "Sword King, this lord has long heard your attainments in the sword path have already reached the level of sword heart illumination. Actually, this lord's mastery in the saber path isn't low either, and this lord has long wanted to spar with you a little." Sword heart illumination. Ling Han suddenly realized something. No wonder Sword King was taken more seriously despite clearly falling short of matching Azure Phoenix Divine Empress in tier. It was because the Sword King already reached the extreme on the sword path, not only achieving Sword Heart, but also its highest tier. Sword Heart illumination. Nothing couldn't be cut, even soul spirits were no exception. Yo was flesh tough and invulnerable? No problem, I'd just strike your soul, turning you into a zombie. Ling Han also felt greatly fearful. His body was comparable to rare metals 1 tier higher in toughness, but even if he reached the shattering void tier, Sword King could still annihilate his soul spirit with a sword strike. This was definitely an opponent that no one would dare underestimate. The 9th Underworld King immediately carried out an attack, not giving the Sword King any chances to attack the Corpse King again. The 7 9-eyed Corpse Kings also charged towards Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. The 1000 Corpse sect was truly formidable. There was clearly only 9th Underworld King alone, yet he could simultaneously fight Azure Phoenix Divine Empress and the Sword King, giving the Corpse King time and space to evolve. On! The Corpse King's viciousness erupted. The water of the pond of the underworld circulated within its body, causing it to undergo a super-fast transformation, but this process was also extremely painful. Even corpse soldiers' bodies which were without sense of pain could feel it. It already gradually entered several thousand years, and not long ago, it received the injection of the pond's water, causing this process to leap suddenly. After it awakened, this process was still accelerating. Pa pa pa, the bones all over its body crackled violently, and countless bone fragments fell down. Its body was shrinking rapidly, yet its presence was growing explosively. In a short while, another eye grew out from its forehead. 12 eyes, even stronger. Its transformation hadn't ended, as its body continued to shrink, and its strength continued to increase. 9th Underworld King laughed loudly. The scheme that the sect had spent several thousand years laying out finally was about to bear fruit. Once the pond of the underworld's water was completely absorbed by the Corpse King, it could completely merge with over 10,000 corpses, reaching at least the level of 15 eyes. At that time, its defense alone would be without match in the world. At this time, martial intent came alive, and against sword heart illumination, it also possessed extremely great defensive power. Even Sword King would find it hard to hurt it. The 1000 Corpse sect was bound to rise up in this lifetime. Chapter 670 Each with a backup move. Chapter 670 Each with a backup move. Reverie _ Henyi. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress battled the 7 nine-eyed Corpse Kings, while the Sword King dueled the 9th Underworld King, and lastly, the 12-eyed Corpse King was undergoing a transformation below them. The situation became extremely delicate. If Azure Phoenix Divine Empress could break through the encirclement, and then block 9th Underworld King, the Sword King would be able to destroy the 12-eyed Corpse King, directly striking it with Sword Heart Illumination to sever the 12-eyed Corpse King's soul spirit. Without a soul spirit, the Corpse King would just be a corpse soldier, and no matter how formidable its power, the threat it could pose would be limited. If they were delayed for too long, allowing the 12-eyed Corpse King to complete its transformation, evolving into 15-eyed, or even stronger. If it then joined the battle, it would be able to suppress the Sword King and Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. Quite a few people already started to flee. Continuing to spectate the battle carried an extremely great risk. If the Thousand Corpse sect won, then it would be a disaster for everyone. Ling Han was still calm. He still had the Black Tower as a trump card, and wasn't afraid no matter how dangerous the circumstances. Although either of the two sides is good, there's still some time before the divine plane descends. I can still found a country to open the skies and avert the calamity, but if the Thousand Corpse sect has the advantage, then all living things will immediately plunge into misery. He made up his mind. The sword in his hand had to be pointed at Thousand Corpse sect now. However, all who appeared on the field were shattering void tier beings, and it wouldn't matter if he charged up only turn into ash. Can the skeletal corpses be picked up to curse that big monster to death? Ling Han pointed at that 12-eyed Corpse King. Earlier, it was hurt by Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, Heavenly Phoenix Tool Spirit, and the Sword King, and there were many bone fragments on the ground. Such a large amount, he wouldn't believe that it wouldn't curse this damned thing to death. However, the problem was, how would he pick them up? The surrounding area was filled with the fluctuation of shattering void tier aura. Not to mention, his current physique was only at the deity transformation tier, yet even if it were at the heaven tier, he still might not be able to endure up close. Please go fight in the skies, Ling Han said inwardly. Only if these people all ran into the sky to fight fiercely would he have the chance to pick some of these white bones and curse that giant Corpse King to death. This giant monster not dying would definitely be a super calamity. Beast Snake King, why don't you come out? Azure Phoenix Divine Empress suddenly shouted. Gaga, seeing you guys fight so enthusiastically, this lord didn't want to bother you guys. With an uncanny laugh, an old man appeared quietly, his figure slightly stooped, but examining closely, he wasn't actually a hunchback, but rather twisted like a snake. Behind him, there was also a silhouette of a giant snake with a pointy and flat head that emitted an ominous glint. The Beast Snake King, Earth Dragon Sex Shattering Void Tier Elite. Snake King, block this old corpse for me. I'll go kill that Corpse King, the Sword King said calmly. The focus now was on the evolving Corpse King. If it truly reached the level of 15 eyes, then there should be no one at the scene that could kill it. Its defense would be invincible. The Beast Snake King laughed loudly and said, Sure, leave this place to this lord. Their relationship was far from good, but now that they were opposing Thousand Corpse sect, everyone obviously stood on the same side. The Sword King immediately charged downwards. The 9th Underworld King wanted to stop him, but the Beast Snake King covered promptly and struck with the palm. His arm actually turned into a giant python over 3,000 meters long and twisted around the 9th Underworld King, and with its terrifying martial intent activated and vein-like patterns radiating, the 9th Underworld King was forced to ward it off first. Reaching their level, no one dared to let their opponent attack as they pleased. That would truly be handing over one's life. Sword King's figure shot downwards, and he was about to seal the fingers on his right hand and slash out, but his figure suddenly halted, his expression turning stern. Sword King, what the heck are you doing? Azure Phoenix Divine Empress immediately shouted. This lord blocking this old corpse for you was not for you to go sightseeing. Beast Snake King also said in displeasure. The 9th Underworld King revealed a grim smile, just as if victory was within his grasp. The Thousand Corpse sect schemed for several thousand years, and even recently injected the Corpse King with the water from the pond of the Underworld, one of the 3 most valued treasures of their sect. Scheming so meticulously, would they not have been prepared for any crises? On the contrary, they were definitely well prepared, and it was rather the 5 great sects that were caught off guard. However, what formidable enemy did the Sword King encounter? Come out! The Sword King looked towards a corner, his gaze like sword, piercing through the void. As expected of the Sword King, I only revealed a tiny bit of killing intent, and you discovered me. A figure appeared from thin air. He seemed to be able to hide within the air, appearing suddenly and seeming extremely strange. This person wore a cloak, and was thoroughly wrapped from head to toe. No one could see how he looked, and if it weren't for his manly voice, even his sex couldn't have been determined. However, judging from just the voice was unreliable since experts could totally change their own voices. Reaching our level, yet still needing to hide in the shadows, how ugly must your lordship be for you not to dare show yourself to others? Sword King said that to the cloaked man with clear intent of prodding him. The cloaked man didn't care at all, but rather followed Sword King's tone and said, "Correct, I certainly am ugly. It's better that others don't see me." He had no intention to act at all, because his mission was to block anyone who attacked the large corpse king. As long as the other party didn't attack, he was obviously glad to be relaxed. The Sword King stared at the other person. This person's presence was inapparent, looking extremely normal, but it was precisely this that made him feel it troublesome. Returning to a natural state and becoming unfathomable. "Is your lordship here by request of the 9th Underworld King?" Sword King asked. "That's right." The cloaked man nodded. His mission was to stall for time, so he obviously didn't mind conversing with the Sword King about some insignificant things. "What benefits did 9th Underworld King give you, He pointed at himself, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, and Beast Snake King, revealing a faint smile. "Can give you double? Truly a touching proposition, but I don't think you guys can give it to me," the cloaked man said. "Say it, whether or not we can, that's for us to decide," the Sword King said with a smile. The cloaked man laughed loudly and said, "What a Sword King, hiding swords in each word, trying to fish out my identity." For elites at their level, the treasures they needed were extremely rare, and it would be easy to guess the other person's identity from that point. "Unfortunately, even if I told you, you couldn't possibly guess it. So why not say it?" Sword King said with a smile. The cloaked man shrugged and said, "Attack, and you'll know." The Sword King stared at the cloaked man, and after a while, he revealed a raging battle spirit. With the shake of his right hand, a long sword appeared, and his entire aura began to skyrocket. Although he was originally ridiculously strong, it had seemed like an exceptional heavenly sword hidden in his sheath, and at this moment, the sharp sword was finally unsheathed. Rays of light were shining in all directions, supremacy over all. The cloaked man was unfazed, and simply stood with his hands behind his back, appearing extremely arrogant. The Sword King attacked, and Xiao, the long sword, was brandished, sword sheath soaring into the sky. Pung pung pung, the stars all over the sky were shattered into pieces again, turning into a meteor shower. The sword she collided, yet the cloaked man was strangely destroyed as he turned into a field of mist, encircling the Sword King. Chapter 671 The Third Killing Formation. Chapter 671 The Third Killing Formation. Reverie _Henyi. No one could see clearly, for the Sword King was enveloped inside a black mist. Only the flashes of indistinct sword lights could be seen, yet the cloaked man's attacks couldn't be seen at all. The Sword King had really been trapped. Everyone was greatly shocked. He was an exceptional expert that had comprehended sword heart illumination, and was the world's strongest in terms of offensive power, but he was actually trapped, something completely unimaginable. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress and the Beast Snake King couldn't help but stop their attacks and look towards the black mist, revealing a deeply thoughtful look. The 9th Underworld King unexpectedly didn't take the chance to attack. His objective was extremely clear, and that was to waste time, stalling till the Corpse King evolved completely. At that time, that at least 15-eyed Corpse King would be enough to allow the Thousand Corpse sect to establish their place as king on these lands. Attacking now would be strenuous and unrewarding. That would really be what a fool would do. Ling Han also stared at that ball of black mist and activated the Eye of Truth, seeing many details that other people couldn't see, even surpassing many shattering void tier elites. After all, this was a mystical power. His expression turned grave, his gaze bewildered and doubtful, and finally absolutely sure, blurting out, "The third killing formation!" "What?" Zhu Xian'er, Qin Lianyu, and the others all cried out in surprise. The Thousand Corpse sect had besieged Million Treasures City with the fourth killing formation, which ended up being neutralized by Feng Piyun. Otherwise, Million Treasures City would have long fallen into the grasp of the Thousand Corpse sect. However, the Thousand Corpse sect had first made arrangements for a long time, and only then did they besiege Million Treasures City. Moreover, the fourth killing formation also wasn't complete, or else Feng Piyun might not have been able to neutralize it. But now, the third killing formation? The third should be more kick-ass than the fourth, but it was laid out just like that, so easily? The shock on Ling Han's face hadn't faded. He saw more than other people, and said, "The third killing formation, is that cloaked man?" Zhu Xian'er and the others felt pins and needles. How was it possible? The third killing formation was a person. "Young Master Han, could you be seeing wrong?" Li Fengyu said. "How can a formation be a person?" No, Uncle Rabbit can guarantee, the third killing formation is certainly a person," the rabbit said, and bit off a mouthful of spirit medicine. "Every few millennia or 10 millennia, the heavens would hand down the killing formations to the world, sometimes on rocks or on metals, but sometimes it would also be inscribed on a living spirit's body to body as a killing formation, extinguishing the world. But..." It paused monetarily. "This is both a great fortune and a great misfortune. With a formation inscribed, one stands at the peak of the world, but would never be able to improve any further, because one's body is the formation, and would be limited by the formation." Ling Han then looked towards the 9th Underworld King, and said, "Perhaps, the Thousand Corpse sect's price for requesting the third killing formation's cooperation was related to this? The Thousand Corpse sect can free the third killing formation from such a fate?" Qin Lianyu cried out in surprise. This was too unimaginable. If this person could become a god, wouldn't he be able to kill gods and murder celestials? Ling Han shook his head and said, "Probably not. Since he can't cultivate, I assume this person's lifespan is also limited. But think about it, what does Thousand Corpse sect do? Refine corpses!" Hiss! Everyone gasped in astonishment. Could it be, the third killing formation wants to refine himself into a corpse soldier and live forever? Possibly. Ling Han nodded. The Thousand Corpse sect is also divine, also a great ancient sect, possessing all sorts of inconceivable methods. Simply refining one's flesh into a corpse soldier yet maintaining one's soul before death might seem an inconceivable thing for us, but for them, it might not be impossible. Everyone nodded their heads. It was no wonder the cloaked man still rejected when the Sword King represented the 5 great sects to offer him better conditions, because even if the current life-extending spirit medicines were provided infinitely, they would at most allow someone to live a few hundred more years. However, refining the body into a corpse soldier, with the third killing formation inscribed on it, perhaps such a body would be able to last eternally. Even if the third killing formation's soul couldn't bear the passing of time and eventually die one day, over several tens of millennia, a new soul might be birthed within his tough body. What could move such an elite was no more than lifespan. This was also exactly what Thousand Corpse sect could give, and what the 5 ancient sects couldn't. "Ha, I understand. Your body is the formation." Sword King's bright laughter came from within the black mist, showing that he wasn't in life-threatening danger despite being trapped. "If I didn't see wrong, what's inscribed on your body is the third killing formation, right?" With that said, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress and the Beast Snake King turned pale. Standing at their height, it was very difficult to die. Death would come either by the might of a heavenly tribulation or the end of one's lifespan, and it was basically impossible to be killed by other elites. But it was different with the third killing formation. The 10 killing formations were used to facing elites. The first killing formation was known to kill gods, and was the strongest weapon of this realm. Even the descended gods would be terrified of it. The period of 10 millennia was near, and a new realm pill would be refined in no more than a few hundred years. At this time, a person bringing the third killing formation suddenly appeared, unexpectedly becoming a new variable. The third killing formation could kill shattering void tier elites. But it was also just a possibility. At least, the Sword King was powerful enough, and wasn't killed by the killing formation. Sword rays radiated and continuously flashed within the black mist. The Sword King was unleashing his divine might, bombarding the third killing formation. This was the contest for the strongest spear. The Sword King was known for fierce and quick attacks, and killing formations also obviously had extremely terrifying attack power. Now that the two people who possessed attack powers that were almost the strongest in this world clashed, the slash of an attack's aftershock could burst and shatter the stars all over the sky. Due to the existence of astral winds, large amounts of star fragments were long shattered in the horizon, but some would fall down, with no lack of high-tier rare metals, and even 10th-tier rare metals. Whoever picked it up would profit a great deal. Everyone continued to retreat. The two beings who were known for terrifying attacks were fighting, and it wasn't safe enough even if they'd already retreated several hundred miles away. Retreating any further, they really couldn't see the battle clearly, and could only indistinctly see the bursts of light in the skies. Only Ling Han could still see everything clearly. He stood high above in the sky and activated the Eye of Truth, yet what he looked towards was that corpse king. Now, its body already shrank to around 30 meters, and the 13th eye also burst forth on its forehead. The 13th eye, even if the Sword King got away now, he might not be able to cause it any harm. No! Ling Han said inwardly. The 1,000 Corpse sect came prepared this time, and even if the exceptional elites of the 5 great sects appeared, the 1,000 Corpse sect would still have reserved a trump card in reply. So, if things continued on like this, the Corpse King would finish its final transformation, becoming an invincible being. No matter whether it was the 1,000 Corpse sect, or the 5 great sects, Ling Han didn't wish them to become any stronger. You guys stay here! Ling Han commanded. His figure dashed out, shooting towards Ghost Lock Ravine. Of course, now the ravine already turned into ruins, and probably after this fight, it would turn into Ghost Lock Lake. Brother Han! Young Master Han! Zhu Xian'er and the others shouted, not wanting him to take risks. Ling Han waved his hand and turned his body into lightning, flying swiftly away. Chapter 672 The 14th Eye. Chapter 672 The 14th Eye. Reverie _ Henyi. Only Hu Niu wasn't the least bit concerned, and said, Don't worry, nothing could possibly happen to Niu's Ling Han. Otherwise, Niu will eat the skies. Hong! As if the skies heard it, a thundercloud appeared, and an eyeball appeared indistinctly within it, blinking and staring at Hu Niu. However, after a single glance, the eye disappeared, and the thunderclouds dispersed quickly. This? Everyone was shocked speechless. Evidently, Hu Niu's outrageous words drew heaven and earth's reaction, alarming the Eye of Heavenly Tao. This meant that the Eye of Heavenly Tao would mete out a punishment in heaven's stead, launching heavenly tribulation to strike the person who went against the Heavenly Tao. However, the Eye of Heavenly Tao only took a glance at Hu Niu and disappeared. It was scared off no matter how one thought of it. Who the hell could believe this? Fortunately, everyone's focus was on the battle afar, and although they discovered the appearance of thunderclouds, no one noticed what caused it and what made it disperse. Otherwise, this would definitely be more shocking than the third killing formation being a person. Xiao Xiao Xiao, Ling Han turned into lightning, and raced towards Ghost Lock Ravine. He had no intention of being a hero, and simply did what he could do, which was to pick up a piece of skeletal corpse that the Corpse King dropped and curse the Corpse King to death with the vial of curses. As for whether a monster like the Corpse King could be cursed to death, he had completely no idea. Doing one's best and being worthy of one's conscience would be enough. He had the Black Tower, and didn't need to worry about his life. Ling Han's speed was very fast, and several hundred miles' distance was soon behind him. As the fallout of the battle was struck down, he evaded as much as possible, and entered the Black Tower when it really couldn't be dodged. Now, no one would pay attention to an unimportant person like him. Moreover, being separated so far, on top of the battle's ripples, the ones with low strength couldn't see him even if they stared in his direction. However, the area already turned into a wasteland here, and searching for a piece of Corpse King's bone was difficult. Too difficult. The majority had been smashed into ashes by the battle's residual ripples, and the leftover parts were buried under the rubble. Wanting to find one was like fishing a needle out of the sea. To curse to death such a large and powerful Corpse King, a small piece of bone was probably not enough, right? Not only did he have to search, but he had to find many pieces. Ling Han searched, but firstly, it was originally like fishing out a needle from the sea, and secondly, he had to look out for the residual ripples of the battle that swept down from the skies. To make matters worse, with the sweep of a residual ripple, the ruins of the valley would change greatly, and he would have to search again, undoubtedly increasing the difficulty. Truly distressing. Distressing wasn't a solution, and Ling Han was still conscientiously searching. If this Corpse King were to really come into being fully evolved, then the scourge it would bring upon the world would be unimaginable. All the common people were crucial to opening the skies in the future. With one more person, the power of the nation would be that much stronger, and the certainty of opening the skies would be that much more. In the sky, the fierce battle was naturally still going on. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress struggled with the 7 great Corpse Kings. Although her battle prowess was clearly superior, the Corpse Kings had each an indestructible body, and their battle prowess was unharmed no matter how she slashed and riddled them with wounds, still constraining her for good. This mighty shattering void tier elite finally erupted with fury, and stored away Heavenly Phoenix Sword. With a loud shout, her entire person transformed into an Azure Phoenix not large, only about 10 meters long, and 15 meters wide with wings spread open. Her entire body burned with azure-colored divine flames as she dove towards the 7 Corpse Kings. On! Swept by the flames, the 7 Corpse Kings all wailed. Even their bodies couldn't endure such divine flames, which were very like to have surpassed the level of the shattering void tier. If they were martial artists, they'd obviously run if they couldn't bear it, but corpse soldiers didn't have intelligence. Even the Corpse Kings were so as well, knowing only to fight desperately. Thus, this also showed the dreadfulness of that giant Corpse King. Only elites with intelligence could be called true elites. Humph, so what of the third killing formation? Can it trap me? At this moment, the Sword King also began to unleash his might. Wang, in the near 1,000-mile radius, everyone's weapons slipped out of their hands and rose into the sky, shio, 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 flying towards that ball of black mist. My sword! My black mythical treasured saber! My 7-fold lotus spear! Everyone cried out, not knowing why they lost the control over their weapons all of a sudden. Even if they stored their weapons inside spatial rings, they could feel the weapons moving restlessly as if about to break out. What was going on? Sword Heart. This is Sword Heart. All the weapons in the world, all belong for my use. What, then how do I fight if I encounter someone with Sword Heart in the future, can't even hold the weapon in hand? No kidding, of those who could cultivate Sword Heart, which one isn't an exceptional elite? With or without a weapon, you couldn't possibly rival them. Shio, 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 all sorts of weapons lined up in a row in the sky and flew towards the black mist, as if 10,000 swords returned to their master, paying respects to the Sword King. Wang, these weapons all lit up and were bound by terrifying martial intent. That was Sword King's sword intent, which represented his supreme attainments on the sword path. Wang! With a loud sound, the black mist was finally cut open. After the Sword King activated his ultimate move, the third killing formation was finally broken open with attacks from the inside and the outside. Pu, the tens of thousands of weapons in the sky fell down like scrap metal. The black mist swirled, transforming back into the cloaked man, who stood in the skies seemingly unhurt. The Sword King stood holding his word, and said indifferently, "Still want to stop me?" "Hee, no need," the third killing formation said dully. "My mission is already complete." "What?" The great elites looked down and saw that giant corpse king was only 15 meters tall, with a 14th eye on its forehead. "Humph, even with 15 eyes, it will be subdued and killed here today," Azure Phoenix Divine Empress said, enveloped by divine flames and constantly dive attacking, making the 7 corpse kings wail continuously. The 9th Underworld King snapped his fingers. The 7 corpse kings immediately landed down and rushed into the ancient caskets, not fighting anymore. The Sword King stared at that corpse king below. His gaze emitted a shocking chill, shadows of swords surging in it, and with a sudden strike of the sword, he fired out a 3,000-meter-long sword ray, striking towards the corpse king. 10,000 techniques returned to 1. *T. Linghan cursed, and hurriedly hid into the Black Tower. He obviously recognized this move, which was Heaven's Sword Sect's strongest single-target killing move. Activated by Sword King's strength, even 10 Shattering Void Tears elites joining hands probably wouldn't dare to fend it off directly. The Sword King slashed at the giant corpse king, but as long as there was a shred of residual ripple left over after his attack, it could also pose a deadly threat to Linghan. Hong, the terrifying sword ray struck, looking as if it was able to split the vast lands in two. The sky suddenly rolled with thunderclouds and the Eye of Heavenly Tao seemed to be appearing again. This attack was too strong to the point of destroying this realm, making the Eye of Heavenly Tao interfere. Pa! However, the moment the sword ray struck down, the giant corpse king suddenly reached out and grabbed onto the sword ray. Pooh! Inside the Black Tower, Linghan instantly spurted out. He knew better than anyone here the power in Sword King's attack. 10,000 techniques returned to 1 could probably even cut open a physique made of divine metal, but it was actually grabbed barehandedly by the giant corpse king. Chapter 673 Robbed. Chapter 673 Robbed. Reverie _Henyi. Ha 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 ha! The 9th Underworld King laughed loudly. This was Thousand Corpse Sect's scheme that spanned several thousand years, and the rediscovery of the pond of the Underworld finally enabled the plan's completion in his generation. 14-eyed Corpse King was already so terrifying, and if it became 15-eyed, or 16-eyed, how powerful would it become? The Azure Phoenix Divine Empress transformed into her human form again, and the Beast Snake King no longer tangled with the 9th Underworld King, standing alongside the Sword King and staring at the great Corpse King below. Now, this was truly troublesome. Dealing with a normal corpse soldier, one could capture the ringleader first in order to capture the followers, kill the one who controlled the corpse soldiers, then the latter would only have instincts left, and killing a being like this was too easy. However, the great Corpse King was different. It possessed its own wits, whether it was high or not couldn't be made out now, but as long as it had intelligence, it was hard to deal with. "Looks like we'll have to convene a few old friends to attack it," the Beast Snake King said. The Azure Phoenix Divine Empress nodded and said, "Now that the Thousand Corpse Sect obtained the Pond of Underworld again, allowing corpse soldiers to evolve infinitely, this Corpse King is extremely likely to reach the high tier of 18 eyes. 18 eyes, the limit of Corpse Kings. If it truly reached that level, gods that descend down wouldn't be able to handle such an existence, and would be suppressed even with battle prowess fully unleashed. Such a Corpse King could be called a divine corpse. Theoretically, this realm didn't allow living spirits at divinity level, but the problem was that the Corpse King wasn't a living spirit. The laws of heaven and earth treated the Corpse King like a spirit tool. Gods, obviously, were not allowed to appear in this realm, but divine tools could. For example, the Black Tower, the Heaven Transformation Bowl, and the Vial of Curses. Thus, if the 18-eyed Corpse King truly appeared, there'd be no one who could rival it in the entire world. It was equivalent to the level of a divine tool, so how could one kill it? Pa! The great Corpse King tightened that hand, and the 3,000-meter-long sword ray instantly crumbled into infinite fragments. It looked threateningly at the Sword King. Being started at by 14 eyes on its forehead on top of the two oculi staring simultaneously was truly extremely chilling and unsettling. Sword King's battle intent was like a blaze. He stared back at the great Corpse King, and vein-like patterns intertwined as his treasured sword lit up. He was activating this 10th-tier spirit tool, sublimating to the limits for a battle. Ka ka ka, sounds of bones crackling came from great Corpse King's body, and endless bone fragments fell off. Its body was in the process of shrinking, and on its forehead, another new eye was in the process of forming. The pond of Underworld's water's effects were truly terrifying, allowing corpse soldiers' transformation to accelerate. However, normal corpse soldiers definitely didn't have such speed. After all, this was only accelerating, and it itself had to have the capacity to evolve. The great Corpse King fused skeletal corpses of several tens of thousands of elites, and was equipped with such conditions. On top of the pond's water, which allowed it to complete the transformation from 9 eyes to 15 eyes in one day, it was an extremely terrifying thing. 15 eyes! It really reached 15 eyes! In the sky, the Sword King and the other two great elites revealed stern expressions. The 15-eyed Corpse King was already infinitely close to God tier, and a frontal battle would be difficult even for them, otherwise, they risked the danger of dying. Fortunately, the Corpse King also used up the accumulation of several thousand years. In the future, even if it drank down tons of the pond's water, it couldn't possibly evolve at such terrifying speed without anything supporting it. Moreover, the 9th Underworld King had also said earlier that he took all the pond's water for this Corpse King's use, and the pond of the Underworld apparently couldn't provide any more water in the near time. Everyone still want to fight? The 9th Underworld King said indifferently. Although his tone was very ordinary, anyone could hear the pride in his voice. He certainly had reasons to feel it. Pa pa pa, the great Corpse King's body shrunk to barely 3 meters, taller than normal people by half. The 15 eyes suddenly opened, and instantly, an ominous chi surged from it, just as if the Grim Reaper climbed out of the netherworld and was going to bring death to this world. You're only bringing the 1,000 corpse sect towards extinction, the Beast Snake King said calmly. Do you really think that we 5 great sects don't have any inner secrets? It's just 15 eyes, and even if it were 18 eyes, there's still a way to kill it. Ha ha, then this lord will wait and see. 9th Underworld King laughed loudly. If there's no more advice, then this lord is going to go. My granddad is still waiting for me to have dinner with him. Hearing his teasing words, Sword King and the other two didn't look too good. 9th Underworld, remember the promise, the third killing formation said. Before the 9th Underworld King replied, he'd already turned and left. One step was several miles, and in several steps, he disappeared without a trace. The 9th Underworld King sucked in with his mouth and let out a strange sound, and after the great Corpse King stared blankly for a while, its expression turned numb, walking towards the 9th Underworld King like a marionette. The battle finally came to a conclusion, ending with 1,000 corpse sects' overwhelming victory. But was it truly so? The great Corpse King suddenly paused and turned to look in a direction. The 9th Underworld was also startled. What was going on? Under his control, the Corpse King shouldn't regain its consciousness until he let go again. The Sword King and the other two also discovered that something was wrong, and glanced in the direction the great Corpse King looked in. In the forest, 3 caskets came out of nowhere. Pun! 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 The great Corpse King suddenly changed its course and walked towards the 3 caskets. Three lives corpse caskets! The 9th Underworld King was startled for a while before revealing a shocked and overjoyed expression. He knew that the sect's most valuable treasure, the 3 lives corpse caskets, had surfaced in the world, but he never expected to see it at this time, and expected even less that the great Corpse King would be drawn by them. 1,000 corpse sects' 3 great treasures. Of them, the pond of the Underworld's water could accelerate the evolution of corpse soldiers, and the demonic noise saber was an extremely strong weapon. Any living spirit killed by the demonic noise saber would be converted into a corpse soldier. The 3 lives corpse caskets provided endless stream of corpse chi, which was the source of power for corpse soldiers and the disciples of the 1,000 corpse sect. The 3 lives corpse caskets combined with the pond's water could make a corpse soldier's growth speed accelerate to shocking levels. No wonder the great corpse king was attracted. The 3 lives corpse caskets were an irresistible temptation for any corpse soldier, just like beautiful women to perverts. Not only corpse soldiers, anyone who cultivated corpse chi couldn't resist the temptation of the caskets, and even the 9th Underworld king himself wanted to dive in. But now, this person that possessed the 3 lives corpse caskets was obviously here to rob, aiming to lead the great corpse king away. The 15-eyed corpse king required several thousand years before it formed its raw form and also completely exhausted the pond's water to rapidly complete its evolution. But now, someone was going to steal it. The 9th Underworld king was obviously not having it. He rushed towards 3 lives corpse caskets. He was not only going to take back the great corpse king, but also take 3 lives corpse caskets back to the 1,000 corpse sect, assembling the 3 treasures. That way, it would be difficult for the 1,000 corpse sect not to restore their glory of ancient periods. Hee, 9th Underworld king, where you are going in such a rush? The beast snake king appeared before him and blocked his path. The 9th Underworld king finally lost his composure, raising his sword and shouting, "Get out of the way! Oh, so fierce! Want to fight? I'll do my best to keep you company." The Sword King also raised his sword and blocked his path. The 1,000 corpse sect had internal strife? Very good, they needed such a variable. Chapter 674 Curse You to Death. Chapter 674 Curse You to Death. Reverie Henyi. If Ling Han flew up and watched from the sky, he would know that an old friend had arrived just from seeing the 3 lives corpse caskets. Rong Huan Xian. This guy was truly audacious to the extreme, daring to act right in front of the few shattering void-tier elites. However, he also really succeeded, and a 15-eyed corpse king would be enough for him to run rampant throughout the world. Moreover, he still had 3 lives corpse caskets, which was equivalent to having the raw materials to transform the corpse king infinitely, and simply lacked the water of the pond of the underworld, the catalyst. However, he could still bring the great corpse king in charge break into Million Treasures City, so would there be any need to fear that the great corpse king wouldn't be able to evolve to the limit of 18 eyes in the shortest amount of time? This was exactly what it was like to be a cat's paw. Get out of the way! The 9th Underworld king burst into anger, and waved the demonic noise saber at the Sword King and the others. 9th Underworld, you tired of living, trying to battle 3 of us alone? The Azure Phoenix Divine Empress sneered. Earlier, the 1,000 corpse sect had 7 corpse kings and the 3rd killing formation before the sides became equal. But now, with only the 9th Underworld king left, he still wanted to turn over the skies? The 9th Underworld king sneered, and said, "You guys aren't afraid of inviting trouble? With 3 lives corpse caskets providing corpse chi, that corpse king will advance into 18 eyes in at most a dozen years. This lord, well, will dig a few more graves to nurture another corpse king at worst. Then please sit and watch, 9th Underworld king." Beast Snake King laughed, obviously seeing through what was 9th Underworld king's provocation. The 1,000 corpse sect was obviously divided on the inside. This was something they were happy to see, and the more balanced the strength of the 2 sides, the better, especially if it ended in wounding both sides greatly in a fight. They would then come clean up the mess, exterminating this sect utterly. The 9th Underworld king was in a rush, but with 3 great elites blocking him together, he couldn't break through their encirclement. The 7 corpse kings were already heavily injured by the Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. They were only able to stall for time, and obviously couldn't truly rival one of the strongest elites of the present age. With the 3rd killing formation gone and him left alone, although he still had 1 ace up his sleeve, it still couldn't help him resolve this situation. What should he do? Ha ha! At the bottom, Rong Huanxian jumped out of the bronze casket. The great corpse king already arrived and voluntarily entered the bronze casket. That endless stream of corpse chi was irresistible for corpse soldiers. After refining for a period of time, this great corpse king would obediently listen to his commands. Thousand Corpse Sect's specialty was to control corpses, so there was not a bit of problem at all. Rong Huanxian was obviously pleased with himself. Possessing a corpse king of shattering void tier level, the world was his to tread freely. The 5 great ancient sects and whatnot were all flatulence in his eyes. Youngster, you and I both are disciples of the Thousand Corpse Sect. How about returning to the Thousand Corpse Sect with me? The 9th Underworld King suddenly said. Once he tricked the Rong Huanxian into entering the sect, could he still not subdue Rong Huanxian with his ways? Oh, then what will I be in Thousand Corpse Sect? Rong Huanxian said with narrowed eyes. His ambitions were great, very great. This lord can take you in as a disciple. 100 years after this lord, you will naturally take my place and become Thousand Corpse Sect's new sect master. 9th Underworld King saw Rong Huanxian's ambitions, and tempted him by promise of profit. Rong Huanxian laughed scornfully and said, According to the sect rules, the one who has demonic noise saber is the Dalguarding Heavenly Venerable, while the one who has 3 lives corpse caskets is the sect master. You should respect me as the sect master and abdicate to be a Dalguarding Heavenly Venerable in accordance with the sect rules. The 9th Underworld King was struck dumb. This brat's ambitions were so great. A mere spiritual infant-tier warrior wanted to be Thousand Corpse Sect's sect master, who would be convinced by you. He said indifferently. Youngster, don't be too arrogant. The most important thing for people is to see their own strength clearly and know their own place. Ha ha ha, I now possess the 15-eyed Corpse King, and soon it'll evolve into 16 eyes, 17 eyes, and the world's strongest of 18 eyes. Is my strength still not enough? Rong Huanxian laughed loudly. 9th Underworld King of all people couldn't retort, because the disciples of the Thousand Corpse Sect counted corpse soldiers as part of their own strength. Although Rong Huanxian's own strength wasn't worth mentioning, with that great Corpse King, he definitely could rank amongst the strongest in the world. This risk Rong Huanxian had taken was truly worth it, like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate to become a dragon. Ling Han! Rong Huanxian shouted. I know you're here. Dare to come out for a fight? Amongst the people he hated most, Ling Han ranked first, so now that he'd obtained a great Corpse King, this powerful henchman, he challenged Ling Han to a fight. Not to mention ones from the younger generations like Ling Han, he even dared to show contempt for the Sword King and the Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. Ling Han? Who's Ling Han? In the surroundings, everyone discussed animatedly, but soon someone revealed Ling Han's identity, a heaven-grade alchemist who'd even obtained the coordinates to a divine treasure trove. If not for Wen Yijian's initiative in telling the whereabouts of the divine treasure trove to the 5 great sects, Ling Han would probably be hunted down by the 5 great sections. Heaven-grade alchemists had exalted status, but how could they surpass the 5 great sects? The entire world belonged to the 5 great sects. Found it. Ling Han revealed a delight look. Earlier, he'd found 3 of the great Corpse King's broken bones, but they weren't large enough, being shattered into dregs under the bombardment of various attacks. However, this chunk was large enough, as thick as a person's thigh. Damn thing, I'll curse you to death. Ling Han put the broken bone into the vial of curses. The bottle might not look big, but there seemed to be infinite space on the inside at least. Storing a few bones was easy. He immediately pressed his finger on the decorative pattern that represented death, and this pattern instantly lit up. Haha, since the pattern lit up, it meant the great Corpse King was dead for sure. Ling Han revealed a smile, leapt up into the sky, and said, Rong Huanxian, I'm here, bring it on! You actually dared to show? Rong Huanxian was startled, and then laughed loudly. I really don't know whether to call you brave or foolish. But since you've come to die, then I'll grant you your wish. Pun! The great Corpse King came out of the casket, and its 15 eyes emitted ominous glints, targeting Ling Han. Ling Han was unafraid, and said leisurely, Such an ominous being hurts the harmony of the world and will be targeted by heaven and earth. Die! Rong Huanxian pointed at Ling Han. Pun, pun, pun. The great Corpse King immediately rushed towards Ling Han, its vicious might bursting forth, and even shattering void tier elites had to defend against the terrifying fiendish chi with all their strength, or else they were bound to be killed. Pa! 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 While running, the great corpse king's forehead actually grew another eye. What was going on? 15 eyes should already have exhausted the great corpse king's ancient corpse powers it fused with in several thousand years, and it was already the size of a normal corpse soldier, so how could it continue to evolve into 16 eyes? This transformation was surprisingly fast. The 16th eye seemed to instantly grow out, and soon the 17th eye followed it. Everyone was struck dumb with amazement. The 9th Underworld King was overjoyed but envious because this corpse soldier should have been his. Only Rong Huanxiang was laughing loudly. The stronger the great corpse king, naturally, the happier he was. 18 eyes. The great corpse king instantly reached the limit of corpse kings, advancing into the level of 18 eyes. However, as it took another step, one of its legs suddenly broke and rotted, and pan, it fell right onto the ground. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.